Would you believe me if I told you an old story? One where the beginning is more than 100 years old. One that's featured every big name to exist in auto racing. Would you believe me if I said nothing grows old here? Where thousands and thousands come to be awed and inspired by speed. One where dreams are born, then just as quickly destroyed. Would you believe me if I said it was more than just a race? One that requires so much sacrifice for just a chance at glory? One where their faces are etched into history to never be forgotten. Would you believe me if I said this version of the story was different? A version where the cars are virtual, but the racing and competition are real. A story that brings grown men and women to tears, then just a page later to a smile from ear to ear. A story so fast it's tough to keep up with. One with danger and thrill around each and every corner. A story about heartbreak. And a story about perseverance. It's a story about redemption. And a story about triumph.
Well, this is the closest thing, boys, to living a dream. Gentlemen, start your engines.
This is the story of the Wicked Energy Gum Fake 500.
And the preparation continues now. Welcome to Brent Marks Racing Sim Team Practice, live from the virtual Indianapolis Motor Speedway in Speedway, Indiana, for tonight's coverage of the second night in preparation for the Wicked Energy Gum Fake 500. I'm Justin Brent. Alongside me in the booth tonight is Zane Scott. We'll be also joined by Billy Rowley along with Baden Stewart throughout tonight's action. Drivers spent all night yesterday preparing for what's expected to be one of the biggest races to start off 2021, with 39 drivers hitting the racetrack. The fastest of those drivers ended up being James Dearden, setting a time of 46.836. That is just above 192 miles an hour. He, along with Skylar Brown, TJ Majors, Dallas Breeze, and Tyson Landis, all set the pace early on for the week during Indy Racing Images opening practice. But today, expected to be a different story. Track temperatures expected to be much hotter throughout the day today. The air temps hotter, the winds much higher today, up to 10 miles an hour to the south at the moment. And all of that and more, a part of the preparations for one of the biggest events of the year here for Brent Marks Racing Sim Team Practice tonight. Saying first things first, welcome back once more to Indianapolis Motor Speedway. It was a productive first day of practice, to say the very least. What are your expectations for day two?
Absolutely. Day one, we saw a lot of guys really struggling to get their cars underneath them with the hot temps and the hot track temps, setting records yesterday for the hottest track temps we've seen in Fake 500 history. Today, we expect to see the same. It's 79 degrees out here in the sim time of May 19th, 2021, or a little bit in the future here for the Fake 500, but the track temp currently sits at 110 degrees Fahrenheit. It's only 12:08 p.m. sim time. We can only expect the temperature to go up, the temp to get hotter, and we got winds blowing out of the south at 11 miles an hour. These guys are going to be flying down the front straightaway, but they're going to have to pay that back going down the back straightaway into that strong headwind. And of course, 58% humidity here. We're going to expect to see that fall very quickly throughout the session here as we're in the summer months in Indianapolis. Justin, cars already on track. The first car to take it, no one other than yesterday's second fastest car on track, Skylar Brown, to go 47.219 so far on the board. And new face here in Fake 500 practice on Brent Marks Sim Team practice day number 2. Billy Brickley from Sofa King Fast Sim Sport is on the track and in second with 47.251, both those times in the high 190 miles per hour range.
And we were talking about this a bit yesterday. We were expecting it to be a bit of a different session where drivers are getting used to how these cars can handle and getting their notes filled and ready to go for next week, especially for this weekend as well for qualifying, especially after seeing the qualifying draw. How do you feel drivers are going to approach this session compared to the last one, especially if they are some of the returning ones?
Absolutely. The guys who are turning here, I'm going to highlight a conversation I had yesterday after we went off air. Some of the Sofa King Fast Sim Sport guys, Tyler Street, Billy Bowerman, they were kind of lost. They had no idea what to expect. These guys ran last year. They said our notebooks have been thrown out the window. We're starting from scratch. But the one person they said that they needed the most to come because he was their setup guy, their guru, their crew chief, that was Billy Brickley. And like I just said, he's currently second on the board. So for Sofa King Fast Sim Sports, they might come around today and get stuff figured out. For some of the other guys, like Skylar Brown and James Tiernan, if he decides to show up here in day number 2, they're going to be trying to improve the setups they already have. Yesterday, we saw high track temps. James Tiernan said, I made a setup last year for cold track temps. This year, it's hot. I'm trying to carry that setup over to make it work here in the heat. Can he get that down today? We're going to yet to be seen. And then a couple other drivers as well, trying to just define speed. We saw a couple guys yesterday say, we're struggling. We don't know what we're doing. Every setup change we make puts us even further behind the ball. Today they look to improve that, and as long as another new name, Rylan Gray, turned his first laps here for the festivities of the Fake 500. He's currently at a 48.448. Expect his time to improve today as he messes around with the setups. But other news, the storylines behind the scenes. 2 drivers have dropped out of the Fake 500 and have been replaced by 2 rookies. Gregory Turner and Doyle Lawrence will now join the Fake 500 field, which takes our count to 39 veterans and 21 rookies, all hopeful to make their first or second appearances in the Wicked Energy Gum Fake 500.
And that is good and interesting news, and 2 big names to think about because Gregory Turner, someone that's notable in sim racing circles, Doyle Lawrence, also keep in mind someone that designed the Letard Esports paint schemes this year for their respective organization. So you have 2 names that have popped up in events such as these, especially as of late, in series as of late across the service.
Absolutely, and I think as this event goes on and the hype builds, we're going to see some more and more prominent names join this event. Maybe not as drivers, but as sponsors, as spotters, crew chiefs, trying to give everyone the furthest inch ahead of their competitors that they can get. We've seen it before. Brian Blackford last year teamed up with Landon Castle and Parker Kligerman. That duo and trio of drivers went quick in qualifying. One sat on the pole, one sat on the second row, and then some. We'll see that this year as well, and it's all going to be about who helps out who and who makes a mistake. Who will accidentally disclose their secret information to the field. We saw it last year. We may see it again this year. It's all going to play out. That's what makes the Fake 500 the Fake 500 and makes this event so special.
Yes, indeed. Looking at some of the drivers around the racetrack, 15 have already made their way into the garage area and made their way down Gasoline Alley in preparation for today's action. Skylar Brown, Billy Berkeley, as mentioned, both on the racetrack. Tyler Street, Tyler Grafton, Shane Keiko, along with Dustin Griffiths. Gregory Turner, we talked about him, is on the racetrack. Clint Stone, Stephen Hill, Rylan Gray, Carl Burke. Among those drivers currently hitting the racetrack and trying to turn laps. Taking a look right now at Gregory Turner's car specifically. He is currently 8th on the board, a 47.7 to begin, and as you can tell, no draft partners for the early going in this session. And now we talked a bit about this yesterday, the approach where we've seen teams start with qualifying trim and then work their way to race trim. Do you see a tweak of that, or based on the history of this event, or do you see the same type of pattern as before?
I think we're going to see the same type of pattern here. It's just easy to get those qualifying trim runs out of the way early. I mean, we don't have that many cars on track right now. Yesterday, we had up to around 30 guys trying to turn laps all at once. And when you have that many guys around this track all spaced out, it's hard to turn a lap without getting any sort of draft. We saw James Tiernan. He went 192 plus miles an hour. That was with the draft. Without the draft, we were seeing guys run 190.5 miles an hour and in that range. So here we're getting a true sense of who's got that qualifying trim speed. And then as the session develops, we're going to see who's got race speed as well. And I think, of course, as we mentioned earlier in this program already, the temperatures are going to rise. So who's got the car that can handle that in clean air, and who's got the car that can handle that in dirty air? These cars are aero dependent. When you're not behind anyone, they can turn on a dime. They're like a dirt sprint car. You point it and it'll go. In traffic, it's like a NASCAR stock car. It won't turn. It'll push the wall. It'll do the weirdest things on you. You may just snap loose, or you may plow hard into the walls here in Indianapolis that have taken so many cars out of races before. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. And here on the front straightaway, Clint Stone looked to the inside of Carl Burke. He's going to let off the pace, maybe just not feeling that run there, but he's going to pull off the racetrack. So right now, guys, in qualifying trim, expect that to change in the race trim a little bit later as we go.
Going on board with Chris Springer as he nearly runs over and does hit the back end of Christopher Tate as he had the check up coming through the short chute in 3 and 4. That's not something you want to do in a race day. And for Chris Springer, didn't seem to have enough time to react there on that checkup, and that's something you need to be able to react quickly to. For Christopher Tate, he had been struggling on the outlap in one of his first practice laps.
Absolutely. Christopher Tate there, enter turn 3, and he was just loose from the get-go. Turned the car in. It started to slide on him. He did a great job catching it, had to walk it up the racetrack, but unfortunately, when he tried to get back on the gas to get the speed up, Chris Springer was right there behind him. Slight contact. They're both going to spin. I believe Tate was able to avoid hitting anything, which if you can do that in the race, that's going to be key because no fast repairs here in 2021 for the fake 500s. So these guys got to preserve their equipment. Even if they spin, keeping it off the wall may be the difference between a 33rd and a chance at Indianapolis glory.
Christopher Tate has made his way back to the pit lane. 14th currently on the board after having that incident, by the way, for him running for Brent Esports at the moment for this event. Now, this is going to be the tough part for some of the drivers who didn't take part in yesterday's side of things is for some of the groups who may be running on their own or may have not hit the track yet, they don't have the same notes as everyone else before. You'd have to think. So how do you try and play that catch-up throughout the next couple days before qualifying?
The answer is simple there, Justin. You just don't. You have to start with what you have. Maybe if you're lucky and you're on a team, you can borrow from their notes. But some of these guys are independents. They're not on teams. They're searching for partners. They don't have a notebook coming here in the day number 2. Guys, yesterday, some of them turning almost more than 150 laps in the 3-hour practice session. Drivers like Ryan Gray, Gregory Turner, those guys were not here yesterday. They were not present. Billy Brickley, they did not turn a single lap at Indianapolis yesterday. Today, they come in here, high track temps. They have nothing to go off of. They're starting fresh. That's going to be a challenge. Those are the guys I want to keep an eye on throughout this practice session. Other notables, though, we want to talk about some of the team guys. Tyler Street. Guess where he's going to go out and qualify on Saturday for Bull Day? He's going to be the very first car out on the track. I talked to him after the broadcast ended yesterday. He said, I'm stressed. First out there is the best spot to be, but I'm stressed. Do I have the speed to put the car in the show? We're going to have to find out. But for him, look to see how he does today as he's going to really try to find that qualifying speed ahead of his first attempt on Saturday morning.
And I must say, he's actually rolling pretty good, I think, comparatively to what he was yesterday. track temp's not near as hot yet. And as I say that, announcer's curse gets a little bit tight off the corner, but that's one of those things to watch of just the wash he got behind James Tiernan. But look at that, Stephen Hill goes second quick on the board. So Stephen's found some speed overnight. He must have stolen some speed bits from somebody last night to make that thing a little bit quicker.
Yeah, Hill was 16th on the board last night. For comparison's sake, his fastest time was a 47.3. That was after turning 94 laps in preparation for this week's event so far. Your thoughts on Stephen Hill as a driver overall, Zane, as he's looking pretty calm and clean on this racetrack, gaining a little bit more speed in the 193 mile an hour range down the start and finish line. I mean, straight.
Absolutely. Steven is one of those drivers that doesn't get talked about much. He's not in the forefront of the iRacing scene. He's not a World of Outlaw pro. He's not a NASCAR Coca-Cola Series pro. He's just a guy that runs on iRacing for fun. He likes coming to elbows up promotion events. He's got a spin in front of him. He's going to lose it off turn 2 as we speak about him. But he's one of those guys that just shows up. He wants to run for fun. He enjoys Indianapolis. He's a big fan. He's from around the Indiana area. This event means a lot to him. For him to put this in the show here would be a big deal. And we want to talk about this. You had mentioned it. Stealing the speed bits. The rumors have already started here at Indianapolis. A fluke, a mess up, so to speak, by one of the drivers in the field may have given away his secrets to a lot of drivers. Who picked those secrets up is yet to be known, but we could see a lot of guys that struggled yesterday come out today and have that speed that they did not have yesterday because of the stolen speed bits. It's Indianapolis. It's going to happen. It's what makes this place great.
It can happen, absolutely. It can be frustrating when it happens, though, at the same time. As we follow along with Shane Keiko, currently in ninth on the board. Talked about Eli Keiko last night, but for Grit Esports, they've been an organization, especially with Grit Marketing, and Nick Olson, that has been rising throughout the ranks this year. Had one driver, in fact, nearly make it to the eNASCAR iRacing Pro Series this year. So they are continuing to gain some notoriety and build their program up in the stock car world. Now moving over to the open wheels after, on top of it, hosting their own series where they had a mixture of different types of cars hit the track against one another.
Absolutely. That team has done a lot for iRacing. And last year, they struggled a little bit. They didn't have the effort they wanted. Shane Keiko, as we just mentioned, he was the 51st qualifier after completion of last year's qualifying effort. He wants to come out here and do better this year. He's currently sitting at a 47.378. He did have teammates that made the race, though. You look at the starting grid for last year's event. They had Kyle Dagger. He started 27th. He was racing under the IIR Sim Sports banner. So they have guys in the show. They have that experience. Can they spread the wealth to their teammates? I know Shane Keiko is one of those guys that would love to make this race, and for him to get in would be a big deal for IRI and Indy Racing image.
I think so, absolutely, too, in their organization, as well as for the Grit Marketing side of things. It's one of the Grit Esports cars that are taking part. We mentioned Christopher Tate, also amongst that grouping this year. As one car spins off the racetrack, it's looking like it's already fairly slick, but the track temp is not at its highest point so far of the week. Remember, this is one thing to keep in mind. The track temp peak yesterday was about 125 degrees Fahrenheit. It's expected to get potentially hotter, as you talked about here. So this could get slicker for these drivers. And keep in mind, this is a more rubbered up racetrack compared to the green track of yesterday.
Absolutely. No rain here in Indianapolis overnight, so this track didn't clean off. It's at 33%, or roughly 33% if you put it on a 100% scale. So these guys have a little bit more grip here on the bottom side of the track in the turns. On the straightaways, of course, it doesn't rubber up. I mean, that's helpful here at Indianapolis. Definitely when you got a track that's kind of slimy, greasy, it's hot, any type of oil that's getting let down by these engines as they go through here, that's just going to bake there, and that's going to get super, super slippery. So any rubber on this track that these guys can get a hold of to help them out is going to be crucial. And when you look at Dustin Griffiths here, as I'm watching him going to turn number 1, he threw that thing in almost like a rally car. He slid it into the turn. And then once he got to that rubber, he had all the grip in the world to drive that car off the turn. We're seeing just how important that rubber and track wear is going to be for these guys as this track heats up.
Absolutely. Drivers expected to hit upwards potentially of as high as 200 laps today if they put in enough time around the racetrack. Some have already put in 18 laps plus here on this racetrack. As these competitors keep working their way around, some of the drivers we didn't touch upon too much yesterday, wanted to start touching upon are the ones that are going to have to play double, potentially triple duty throughout the week for some of these events. Thing is for drivers like Carl Burke. We kept an eye on the 53 moments ago, for example. 14 laps currently on the racetrack. He's pulled off for the time being for adjustments. He's one of the Northwest-based drivers that has to balance the schedule of this event while preparing for events such as the Northwest Racing Series for its Truck Series and Cup Series for the next couple days.
Absolutely, and I think that's going to highlight something. We briefly talked about this yesterday. We have guys that are big asphalt racers, big pavement oval racers, and we got a couple guys that run the road courses. We got a couple guys that run nothing but dirt. We have some past, iRacing dirt pro drivers in this field, a couple current ones. The talent that is in this race and in this qualifying field is diverse. It's across all the disciplines of iRacing. Carl Burke, as you just mentioned, the oval guy. He's an oval expert. It's what he specializes in. He's got to go against some of these dirt guys that are living the dirt to Indy dream that existed almost more than 50 years ago with the drivers like AJ Foyt, Harnelli Jones, Bob Swikert, Billy Vukovic, and more. Those guys made their careers running on dirt, and then they came to Indianapolis and etched their name into the history books to never be forgotten. It's a wide field. It's a diverse field here at Indianapolis, and guys from all over the iRacing spectrum are going to try to put their names at the top. For Carl Burke, though, going from the trucks, the stock car styles, to the Lotus 79, it's a big change. These cars, faster, they accelerate quicker, they have more downforce, they can turn on a dime. The stock cars, the trucks, slower, they accelerate out of the turns like a bus. They're not as nimble. A mistake by them you can catch. Here with the Lotus 79 at Indianapolis, the smallest mistake, the smallest bobble could end in disaster in any of the turns.
Did you just call NASCAR stuff school buses?
Absolutely.
All right, I was just making sure that they are an inferior car, but hey, we're
Jeremy Zarfos in the chat.
Opportunity.
Jeremy Zarfos in the chat wanted to make sure that it was known that last year's 2020 Fake 500 champion Kevin Click, a dirt racer, primarily is what he runs the most. It's what he specializes in. He went from the back of the field to take the win on one of the final laps of the race. So right now, the Fake 500 trophy lies in the hands of the dirt community and drivers like Mike Rasmus, Carl Burke, Gregory Turner, and them take it to their respective disciplines from the dirt drivers. It's yet to be seen, but I think we're going to get a good indication from today's practice session on who will have the ability to possibly do that.
Well, and the good thing that I'm noticing right now, Lance Sponberg making his first practice laps at Indianapolis in the Lotus 79 for the Fake 500 this year. He is doing his install lap, getting himself up to speed, trying to work with Ryland Gray there a little bit. Ryland Gray, Christopher Tate, Gregory Turner. So we're seeing those four guys that did not make an appearance yet on the practice charts last night. They're towards the back of the field right now. So like you guys were saying, notes is very important. Getting yourself up to speed. If you're a day behind, you're a day behind. So, but they're out there making their practice laps. Lance making his first appearance for the week. But, a lot of these pavement guys, a lot of our viewers might not be, knowing of a Carl Burke or a Christopher Tate. So this is a pretty wide range of not only skill levels, but disciplines as well on iRacing.
Yeah. I was about to say Lance Baumberg actually races against Carl Burke, too, in those Northwest Racing Series races. And the reason, by the way, he's currently only running 161 miles an hour is I think he doesn't realize there's an hour gear on these cars, and that's where some of the experience can come in, where you need to know the exact gearing for these cars to be able to properly set them up. If you don't have that experience, it can hurt you even of knowing how many gears you actually have in the gearbox.
Absolutely. These cars are different. They're kind of weird. There's not much to them when you look at the setup charts that some of these drivers have. In the car, there's only a limited amount of gears. It's not many. You don't have 10 gears to go through. You have roughly 4, I believe, off the top of my head for my last Lotus 79 experience. It's been a hot minute. But these drivers, they just got to get familiar with these cars. They got to understand it. You got to know the ins and outs of this car to make it fast. You can't just go in and start clicking on the setups and think, if I lower the ride height and take out downforce, it'll become fast. This car's not like that. It's a challenge to set up. I briefly mentioned, or I talked to someone yesterday after practice. They said if you change one thing, you got to change everything else. Just the way it affects these cars is just odd. It's uncharacteristic of a normal race car. So knowing the ins and outs of the Lotus 79 are definitely going to help, and we're going to see that, here in practice and qualifying, and of course in the race. Who knows the ins and outs of the race car? Who can set it up to be the best handling car on any type of track?
Well, and that's, I think, one of the keys is you think as a pavement guy, get the thing low, or in the NASCAR world, they call it sealing off the splitter and sealing off the side skirts. With this thing, you kind of can't do that. You have to, your ride heights are so important for the way that the ground effects work, of getting the extra downforce onto the car, that once the fuel load starts burning off, your setup completely changes. So those low fuel runs, even though they're not qualifying runs, those still are important for later on in the race, after you make yourself run your X amount of laps before your pit stop. And with the way that the pit stops are going to be working this year, we're not going to see guys able to run full tanks for 70, 80, 90 laps like we did last year. There's going to be more pit stops in this year's race than there was last year. So a lot of give and take and a lot of thinking is going to be going through these guys' heads. 17 cars currently have taken time as of right now on the racetrack. Excuse me, with Dallas Breeze, Justin Carey, Kyle Dager, we talked about earlier, Aaron Rouse, and Dano Lindsay all getting into the server as well. So looks like about 22 to 23 guys entering into the server right now, and it's going to be a pretty fast and furious practice session, as we're just coming up on the 30-minute mark into the Brent Marks Racing Esports practice day.
Yes, indeed. And let's talk a little bit about Brent Marks. We mentioned some of his drivers among the top competitors on the board during day one of practices. A lot of support, as you guys talked about, for esports in 2020, especially from Brent Marks.
And that's one of the very cool things about iRacing is with a really truthfully a friendship between himself and Jeremy Zarfos. With Brent Marks really growing up and getting his racing roots deep in central Pennsylvania, part of that Pennsylvania posse, and moving on to the world of outlaws, now kind of running a true outlaw schedule wherever they want to with the Big Game Tree Stands car, it used to be the Big Game Tree Stands car, but a lot of his personal sponsors coming on board to help that team out. And it's good to see the value that he's seeing, the value for his marketing partners coming into the esports realm. I know, Alkaline 88 is a sponsor of Brent Marks Racing, and one of their big points that they really liked was how active the esports community is. That's a whole nother avenue of advertisement for these guys. So, we've seen different drivers in the past have sim teams. Brent Marks is fairly new within the last year and a half or so. But I know Jeremy, and actually, this race has never been won by anybody other than a Brent Marks esports driver, with Kevin Click picking up the win last year. So a lot of his cars are in the field. Skylar Brown sitting at the top of the board. He's another member of that team as well. So they're a tight-knit group, and it's good, though, to see the real-life drivers seeing the benefit, of esports marketing as we progress down this road. I know we see it a lot with the crossover with the Coca-Cola NASCAR series, with those drivers getting, it's another way to advertise those sponsors. And with the way things are in this kind of economy, any exposure you can give them, the better. Especially for some of those guys on the Coke series with their NASCAR counterparts. It's just another way to get another 15 to 20 races in throughout the year. So, and with more of those races becoming on actual network TV, which is something I never thought I would ever see, is an esports race or a NASCAR race on NBC or something like that, with from esports, and it's good that some of these guys are being seen as what they are. Real Fowler is one that comes to mind that's been around for absolutely ever, and getting some of the notoriety finally. So it's good to see. But glad Brent Marks Esports is on board with us this year for the Fake 500, and it's good to see the progress that's happening out in the racing world.
Absolutely agree with you on that part. As, by the way, one of the noteworthy drivers just rolling their way onto the racetrack. We talked about him as one of the favorites potentially for the pole for this year's event. Joshua Chin is now on the racetrack. A longtime sim racer representing Greg's setup shop on his hood, as well as the sim shop. The Team Chimera driver, one of iRacing's most well-known drivers, as well as well-known photographers, working for several different drivers across the service. So he's someone that's expected to be very quick, Billy, throughout this entire week.
Yeah, he was one that I know we were really excited that he came on board last year and entered into the Fake 500, and good to see him back. And last year, really just kind of laid under the radar for most of practice. Had a bad qualifying draw, which put him, where he had to bump his way into the field. I believe, Zane can correct me if I'm wrong, but he bumped himself into the field within the last 15 minutes of qualifying. So,
yep.
When you go through and the amount of talent that's in the field to keep a guy like Joshua Chin on bump day is pretty astounding. His qualifying draw this year, a lot better. So he's definitely one, I believe, that's going to make a good run for the pole here on Saturday.
Joshua Chin will be the fourth car to tackle the track on Saturday at roughly 1:12 p.m. Eastern Time. That is his qualifying draw for pole day qualification. So very early in the draw, and an odds likely favorite to take home the pole award here for the Fake 500.
See what the first laps for him go up to speed with. He's actually nearly plowing the wall down, in fact, early on. A little bit on the tight side, despite the hot racetrack. Start off his practice, a 48.1. And shouldn't be surprised since the top times have been with the help of Toe in the early portions of the session from Brown, Hill, Springer, Brickley, and Stone. Your current top five after 35 minutes on the board. And as a driver, do you prefer a setup? We talked a little bit about this before. That's more so better now from what we know so far from the draft or in the traffic, especially knowing what could happen in these types of races as we look at your top 10.
Well, I think it just really depends on what kind of, what you're looking at. I think with Joshua, if he's in the case of knowing that he's going to be going out early, he's going to have some of the best track conditions on Saturday, it's almost more advantageous for him to be working on a race setup as he goes for a little bit of a spin cycle into turn one. So his car might be on that ragged edge of, and again, we're looking at wind as well. Wind out of the south right now. We'll pull that up here as we go back to some on track. But yeah, winds 10 miles an hour, 10 to 11 miles an hour out of the south. So we're seeing that run, basically you're going to get a huge run down the back straightaway, but then a headwind going into turn one, which is going to change the car pretty drastically at each end. So track temp is still rising up to 115, where it was 110 when we first started here about 35 minutes ago. So definitely a big change. I'm sure Josh is just getting a feel of what's of what to come, get reacclimated into the car, and fully expect him to move himself up on the timesheets.
Especially since there's plenty of time to get some laps in as well. Drivers like Tyson Landis yet to hit the racetrack, throwing his car, curling down gasoline alley. Colin Dager also yet to hit the racetrack, is currently in the pit lane, making final adjustments. Gentlemen drivers so far have taken times. Skylar Brown continues to be one of our quickest drivers once again as we follow along right now with one of the air draft range. That's James Tiernan trying to get some pole off Dallas Breeze. And for Dallas Breeze, was able to bump up his time in the Apex Autosport machine in the final 10-15 minutes of the first day of practice, in fact, which only a couple drivers were able to do to put themselves in the top 5 late. Most drivers set their quickest times in the first 40 minutes of that session.
Yeah, Dallas working with James Tiernan, I believe, was working with him yesterday afternoon to try to get himself back up to speed, and they're actually getting ready to come up on Joshua Chin. So I would fully expect these three to be turning some pretty good laps here over the next few minutes. But Dallas with a new machine, he got rid of the gray primer finally, and he's put some white on that car for Apex Autosport, who's the title sponsor for Pole Day as well this year. So huge thanks to Spencer Stubbs at Apex to come on board once again.
Especially to help give him some actual paint onto the car. Nice egg white.
Dallas always has he's got a knack for the vintage variety. He's a photographer as well, does a lot of IMSA, and very, very cultured photographer in the racing world. He'll go from a road course race at Mid-Ohio to a dirt track at Eldora on the same day. So one of the traveling guys, and actually was a refueling guy for an IMSA team back, I believe, in the early 2000s, and they won at Mid-Ohio. So he's got some real-world experience as well when working on these race cars.
How critical is that real-world experience, in your opinion, to help out with that type of stuff on the sim, as well as to have that knowledge to help yourself on the sim to be able to build?
I think actually it's pretty crucial. I know I can speak from the dirt, the dirt side of things, more so than here with the Lotus, but we've talked about it a lot internally before, and the numbers may be a little bit different, but in the grand scheme of the way that it all works, these cars are very, very similar in the way that you have to adjust them. So if you do have some, we talked about yesterday with Kyle May. Kyle May works at a place that literally has rebuilt some Lotus 79s and some Indy cars from this era. So they still continue to race them. So they can actually understand. What the car is doing and what to change with it, which is a big help. I know, especially on the dirt side of things, if you go into it with a good understanding of what the car wants to do, what it's supposed to do, makes a big difference.
Absolutely. And some teams, mind you, have continued to grow as this is going on across the sim. There's one organization, let's say, which that just added, for example, a NASCAR Cup Series crew chief to their listings to help along with things. So those can be helpful, as talked about. By the way, Kevin Click, Tyson Kendall among the next drivers expected to hit the racetrack. Tyson Landis is now on the racetrack for his first time tonight, representing one of the Wicked Cushion cars. And he was quick, remember, last night in practice, especially in the later going, especially in the drafting packs, which were up to 3 wide down the straightaways. Oh, by the way, that access road could be one of the more trickier ones to try and get off of towards race day, potentially, Billy. How do you try and approach that and get that practice in?
That's a big piece. We saw that last year where guys were actually going out, getting themselves up to speed over a couple of laps, and then bringing it down onto pit road. And for that reason of making sure that these guys could get into pit road easily and off of pit road. The pit lane here is extremely narrow coming out onto the racetrack, and it's very easy to lose the car if you're not paying attention. But you want to get out as quick as humanly possible, but you really have to be careful not to put wheels in the grass. If you put wheels in the grass, game over. And especially this year with no fast repairs on anything, once we get towards the racing experience, that's a death sentence, really, if you're not careful.
By the way, new driver second on the board. We mentioned Clint Stone earlier before. Got the help of a bit of a tow to get to a 47.185. That's a 190.738 mile per hour lap time. Currently, you can see trying to work with Aaron Roops, trying to race against him in that number 18 car with the various different colors on that machine. And that, as we talked about, is also going to be critical to keep in mind for some of these times, is drivers, some of them want the space to be able to prepare. Some of them want to get groupings such as this up to 5, 10, 15 cars. We haven't seen a massive pit party yet either throughout this session or throughout either of the sessions, really. to be able to have those massive groups. They've just naturally come together so far.
Yeah, I think a lot of Clint Stone was one that showed a lot of speed early on yesterday, and then kind of as the track got hotter, it started to taper off. But you can see right there, we'll go on board with him a little bit. He's actually been making quite a bit of progress with that Sofa King Fast SimSport team. Is Billy Bowerman and the Tyler Street and the rest of them showed yesterday. So they might have found something overnight to try to get themselves a little bit better. The turn-in on this car looks a lot better than it did yesterday. Really getting himself down onto the bottom of the racetrack and right near the rumble strips, which is right where you want to be.
What can you do to adjust? And I'm asking this to both of you guys, or what would you do to adjust to help that turn-in if you were struggling or turn out of the corner with this car?
With this car, it's very, very ride height dependent and air pressure. From what at least it seemed like to me in my limited experience with it. I know a lot of guys are starting to mess with some cambers and some toes, wing angles. Keeping the air over the car is extremely important, but making sure that you have enough front grip in order to get down into the corner. So some of these guys are starting to mess with air pressures, just a half a pound to a pound. Either direction, trying to get it to turn in a little bit better, and then watching those tire pressures as you go through the run. Because again, we're not dealing with it. It's great if you can run one lap extremely quick. We saw that last year where a couple of guys were running, their first and second laps were absolutely gangbusters, but by the time they got to their third and fourth laps, they were extremely tight onto the racetrack. I believe Tommy Corcoran last year struggled with that, where he was rolling around really good laps 1 and 2 and then started to fall like a rock in 3 and 4, which ultimately is what makes or breaks your lap times. Ideally, you'd like to be a little bit on the loose side, starting off your qualifying run and then getting a little bit tighter as it goes. So air pressure makes a very big difference. Probably the biggest thing on this car from my understanding with talking to some of these guys.
Absolutely. Few moments we'll be able to chat with some of these drivers. And Zane, real quick, we want to hear your counterpoint on that and how you would adjust things from your perspective.
From my perspective, I think a lot of these guys are maybe looking at that front downforce, that front wing angle on what they want to run. We know that some guys have tried to run it flat. 2.0, I think, is the lowest setting you can go with this car. They tried it. They didn't like it. They went to 2.5. They said, we didn't like that. We went to 3. They didn't like that. They went more. You got to remind yourself. The more wing angle you put in this car, the more grip and turn you might have. We are losing that straight line speed. And at a track like this, we are running consistently at 193, 94, 95 to 200 miles an hour down the straightaways. You need all that speed. It may help you when you're in the draft, but once you get out in front, you're not going to be able to stay there. And last year, in the first about 20 laps of the Fake 500, we saw the field get pretty spaced out. There wasn't too many packs, so those guys that have that steep wing angle in it are going to pay the price for that later on. It's going to be interesting to see how we do this here. James Tiernan is starting to work his way up the speed charts here. 47.189 puts him third fastest overall. He's closely behind, it looks to be Chris Springer here turning laps. They're already on lap 30 and 31 as they avoid an accident right there. So guys getting a lot of practice laps in. Going a little bit further down this order, Joshua Chin still at a 48.064. Question needs to be asked, is Joshua Chin running on a race setup, or is he working on a qualifying setup? Or maybe he's gone back to ground zero and he's starting fresh. There's many questions that are yet to be answered here in today's practice session sponsored by Brent Marks Sim Team, but we will eventually get those answers. But how about we bring down our first driver here to interview Tyson Landis, last year's third place qualifier. He started on the outside of the front row for the Wicked Relief Gum Fake 500 last year, and unfortunately dropped out of the race due to some internet issues. Tyson, you got a copy?
I got you.
Tyson, you are a driver that's familiar with Lotus 79. Yourself, a driver that runs with the Lionheart Series here and there. You got some experience in this car outside of Indianapolis. What is the big difference between when you go in from a track like Long Beach, a tight road course, tight turns, there's not a lot of room to run side by side, to a big, wide, high-speed, fast track here like Indianapolis Motor Speedway?
There's nothing quite like Indianapolis. I mean, just look at all the people lined up down the front stretch. I mean, right there. that doesn't make the hair stand up on the back of your hair. I don't know what does.
Tyson, last year your qualifying effort was good enough to put you on the front row, and it almost was a pole position there. If the lap speeds could have just come up a little bit on some of these slower laps there, you were close to it. Do you think you can repeat that effort this year here for the Wicked Energy Gum Fake 500? And I'm going to take a quick look here at where you're going to roll off in the qualifying order. It looks like it's going to be kind of late.
52nd.
50 seconds. That's a late draw. So 4:24 Eastern time is roughly when we think we'll see you on track. That'll likely be moved up to around 4 p.m. So you're going to have the heat of the day for your qualifying effort. So not what you had last year. What are you going to do to the car wise, or are you going to make any adjustments to factor that in?
You're going to have to make some adjustments for sure. Honestly, it's just going to be try to get as close to the top 33 as possible and hope that I make it in, because it definitely, I don't think that's late of a run. I'm going to have a chance at the front row, honestly, because it's going to be so hot, unless, it rains or something. Who knows?
Who knows? That's absolutely correct. Well, I mean, I know, but the drivers do not. They're not going to know until the day of. With that late run there, is there any chance that you can make your first attempt and then quickly jump in line there once the track opens up to anyone to make their second and third attempts? Or are you going to take that attempt and then wait a little bit till the track maybe cools off before you jump back in line?
I think you got to wait and try to time the track conditions. I mean, that's the race in itself right there, is just getting back to the line at the right time. So if you could, miss it by 10 minutes and you not make it in. So that's going to be really tough.
Last year, you saw a teammate get bumped out of the field on bump day in the final 15 minutes. He sat outside the field. He finally got the call. He made it in. He eventually won the race. You were already out of the race by that point. What was that like there, watching your teammate, helping your teammate come up and get that win?
Honestly, it was awesome. I mean, me and Jay-Z were in there in Discord with him, and Alex Smolders, and I think Braden was in there, and we were kind of helping with fuel strategy and, and just kind of help spot him a little bit and telling who's getting runs and whatnot. And then, that last yellow happened, and it's like, you got a shot here. And he's like, maybe I should just hold back. And no, go for it. And he went for it, and he tubbed him.
Indianapolis, absolutely. You mentioned that there he wanted to maybe wait back. He wanted to sit back and see what happened. You guys told him to go for it. With the way that this race works, this race is 500 miles. It's no more, it's no less. That is Indy tradition. It's a controversial topic. We believe in the spirit of the event. So for us here in the Fake 500, it is 500 miles. We will not do any more than that. But with that, when you come down there, let's say in the final 5 laps or on a late race restart, and you know that a caution flag could end it, do you stop waiting back or do you go for it? And
you got to get up front. You got to get that. You got to get that P1 position and hope the yellow comes out, and just like Kevin did, or you just play it out and it goes green, and we have a 3-wide finish or something.
Absolutely. Well, we're gonna let you get back to the track here and get some laps in. You're currently sitting a little bit further down the charts than you probably like at a 47.906, which was roughly probably I think about 188 miles per hour, 189 miles per hour. So we'll let you get back out there, turn some more laps. The car looks sharp this year, and we look forward to seeing what you can do here later this week and then come pole day here on Saturday.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. You have a good one.
That is the driver of the Wicked Relief Gum Lotus 79, last year's third place qualifier, Tyson Landis, in the number 31 machine.
Again, very happy Tyson Landis joining us there. Monday, our drivers currently making their way on the racetrack and currently pulling off is the number 22, Justin Carey, 15th in this practice session so far with a 47.432 on the speed charts. Talking with Justin Carey just moments ago as he is pumped up, I think, to be able to have the opportunity to work with him. Justin Carey, do you have a copy?
Yes, sir, I do. How are we doing this evening?
Doing good, doing good. How's the car going so far in your preparation this week?
Yeah, it's going pretty good so far. I'm actually a little further ahead than where I plan to be right now, working on a qualifying setup. I've had some pretty good track time out of by myself, so my 4s and 5s there are pretty indicative to where I can run on qualifying day, and I think with the track temperature right now, that's actually a pretty good speed.
How has it been trying to find that balance for that speed to be able to hit those 4s compared to some of the others who are still in the midst of some 8s, in fact, for some of them in this session so far?
Yeah, we actually just hit on something here in the last 10 or 15 minutes on this car that we never really tried in the past, and we're trying to find as much as we can, and it definitely helped us. We picked up about 3/10 on the laps. We were in the 8s last night, and just a couple little changes got us down into the 4s, so we're really excited about the progress and the motion we're going right now.
Of course, you have a lot of experience when it comes to IndyCar, specifically working as a spotter in the IndyCar series. How has been trying to balance that along with the sim racing side of things and being able to race the Brickyard here?
Yeah, it's really cool. I know Billy out there with you guys knows my love and passion for the Speedway, and a lot of people ask me why. A lot of people that aren't in racing ask me why I do what I do in racing, and it all comes down to being able to be a part of the greatest spectacle in racing. No matter what part it is. I was fortunate enough to now do the last 4 years of it. Last year with Pato Award, actually was able to do the full season with them on the IndyCar schedule, which was really, really cool. Really enjoy it. But it's like everyone said. Like I said, everybody, if it's shopping carts, grocery carts, I don't care what it is. If you're racing at the Speedway, it's special, and it's it means more than anywhere else.
What's kind of the reaction from the real-world drivers and crew members you've worked with for racing in an event such as this, and the feelings they have towards potentially cheering you on for an event such as this, as you were among those drivers who were able to get in the green for bump day last year?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a few of the guys that I spot with that they get on here and they watch, and they do cheer me on. It's kind of nice. And then when we do show up to the races, they talk about my iRacing and what I do on here. It is very cool. Last year getting in on bump day was pretty exciting. It was stressful. I've lived the stress of the Speedway in real life, being with the Schmidt-Peterson team, obviously a couple of years ago. So then sitting here and doing it again, it's amazing how much that, kind of correlates to even on iRacing to real life.
How difficult is it going to be, though, on qualifying day in a couple days from now? Because right now you're lined up in the bottom half of the running order, around the 30s to 40s for your qualifying position.
Yeah, that's a little bit of an unknown right now. We don't know what the weather's going to be come qualifying day. Being late in the day, I'm really hoping that last night and tonight's weather is very indicative to what we're going to see come my time slot in qualifying. But if it goes cold, last year on bump day, I had a really good cold weather setup that I've done a little bit of work on myself here in the off season. So hopefully I'm prepared for either way it goes.
By the way, new fastest time at the top of the board, a 191.135. Once again from James Tiernan, that over Skylar Brown. But that changes things over to what some of these drivers are working on too in the race trim. How has that progress been going about in preparation for this race, and as well as the potential for the Patriot 100?
Honestly, I haven't done a whole lot of race trim practice right now. I'm going to save that for next week. There's no point in having a good race setup if you're sitting at home watching on TV. So I'm really working hard on getting in that top 33, and then next week we'll really start building on a race day setup.
Understandable on that. What's kind of the mindset then, the focus now then, to be able to get inside that top 33? What's kind of that mindset and or advice you receive to be able to make sure you're locked in for it?
Trying to keep the car from falling off on the 4-lap run right now, as well as firing off early. One thing that if you watch in kind of real life, you always see, the Penske guys put that big first lap number up, but then they also put the big fourth lap number up, where a lot of times some of the other teams are, have a big fall off over the 4 laps. So really trying to get that big first lap number, but not getting the fall off over 4 is really crucial here.
Couple more questions, and interested on this one. You mentioned, of course, who you've worked with in real life as well. There was the virtual side where the real world racers came to iRacing for the iRacing IndyCar Challenge and those opportunities from there for spotting wise and whatnot. Do any of the real world drivers or crew members you work with plan on helping you if you make the show to give back and spot for you, if you don't mind me asking? If so, who?
Actually, I haven't even spoke with any of them about it. I do know that one of my real good friends, Mike Ford, who also spots for Simon Pagino, would definitely be a guy that would be on here to help me immediately. I have another good friend of mine, Brad Ringer. I know that's from the open wheel side of things, that helps me out tremendously on iRacing and would be here at a moment's notice as well.
Anything else you'd like to add before we let you get back to practice?
No, I just want to thank you guys, everyone at Elbows Up Sim Sport, for what they do. We got to thank my sponsor, Spinsky's Property Services, Brandon Miller Racing Solutions, and everything that goes on to put on this event. Wicked Energy. A lot goes into put on an event this big, and everybody that plays a small part in it, it ends up being a big role when it's all said and done. So thank you to all of them.
And I got to say, because I didn't get to say it to you at the Little 500 this year, congrats on Bobby Santos finally getting the dub. Obviously I was pissed because it ended with me and Scotty, but if we can't win it, you guys are always one of my favorites, so good to see you finally do it. And we didn't almost have to fight anybody in the spotter stand this year.
Yes, the problem normally there is it's not really the other spotters, it's normally the officials that struggle to understand their own rules, and every now and then you got to explain to them what their rule book says, which is only about 2 paragraphs long, but you still got to explain it to them every now and then.
Yeah, one of my favorite Little 500 memories of all time was I was causing a ruckus over a certain pit stop, and something happening, overheard something with another spotter going over to the official, and I went, "That ain't right." And as soon as I keyed up and hollered, there was Justin right with me, throwing just as big of a fit. So always a good time, and yeah, definitely. And good luck the rest of the week, man.
Yeah, thank you. Other than this year winning it, my biggest memory there is when I was asked by the Anderson Police Department, told by the Anderson Police Department that if I step foot in the press box again, that I'll be leaving in handcuffs.
Always a good time at the Little 500. Always a good time. My favorite short track race, but yeah, good to see. And what do you got going on this year for the IndyCar series?
Yeah, so I'll be with Potter Award again for the full IndyCar series. Should be able to get to, as long as COVID allows, get to all the road courses as well. Last year they had a 20-person per car limit, so spotters aren't super important coming to road courses, so I didn't get to go to any of those, but this year hoping to get to go there, and then probably do some racing with Bobby Santos this year again.
Well, good to hear, and if you need a turn 3 spotter, you let me know.
Hey, absolutely. I worked with you a couple years ago there, so I enjoyed it and would work with you anytime.
Justin Carey, thank you very much for the time.
Thank you, guys.
Justin Carey, it's a pleasure to have him along. Take a quick step aside. You're watching and following along with Brent Marks Racing Sim Team Practice. It's day 2 for preparation for the Wicked Energy Gum Fake 500 on Elbows Up TV.
If I bleed tonight, if I am sad tonight, I don't have a job to find. And if I work tonight, if I'm so tired tonight, I'll fall asleep when I'm home. When I'm home.
With the Butt Kicker Gamer 2, What you see and what you hear is what you feel. Butt kicker. The future is feeling.
Back live for the virtual Indianapolis Motor Speedway for coverage of the Brent Marks Racing Sim Team practice. We're at the moment, it's James Tiernan at the top of the board with a 47.087. That's 191.135 miles an hour, followed by a 190.9 set by Skylar Brown. That was separated at one time by 1/1000th of a second. Then third is Clint Stone at the moment with a 190.7. Then Stephen Hill, then Chris Springer, the top five. Currently in sixth, Billy Brickley, Carl Burke, Shea Keiko, along with Tyler Grafton and Kevin Click among your top competitors on the board so far. One of the more anticipated interviews of the night so far in preparation for tonight is the one driver who's currently in the race car, but is very much looking forward to talking to Billy Rowley. It is Billy Brickley in the Battle of the Billies. Billy.
Well, in the Battle of the Billies, if we're at Knoxville, Brickley's winning every time. But anywhere else, I think I can take him. How are you doing, Billy?
You can probably take me anywhere nowadays.
Dude, I don't know.
Suck at dirt.
I have been atrociously bad. I have been bad enough. I actually legit missed the show in an official race at Lima last week. So
okay, it might not be that bad.
yeah, it's we're on the struggle bus here. But your first day in practice, you weren't with us last night. But how's everything going in the? Everybody a little up more? Bowerman was talking last night where you guys are trying to find some speed and some comfort. Hopefully you're finding it today.
Yeah, we seem pretty good. I just got back this morning from vacation in Florida, so I think I'd rather be there than up here. But either way, we're still doing pretty good. We wanted to get out pretty early and lay some qualifying laps down before everybody got out. And, we feel pretty confident, really. I mean, I think my fast lap, that was a solo run. I'm 4 or 5 tenths slower in a draft, so that's kind of strange. I can't figure that one out, but I think we're doing a lot better today, it seems like, so far.
Well, that is good to hear. I know that you guys have a lot of cars, and actually a couple of them in the top 10 right now. I know when you'll get Bowerman up towards the front of the field, he's always one of my favorites. But you guys have been, you guys were here all last year as well, making the show. Yourself and Bowerman, I believe, and a few others making the Patriot 100. Anticipation for this year? What's the ultimate goal?
We won all 4 in the show this year. Tyler just barely missed it. Me and Bowerman were able to make it in. We had a good strategy going for the end of the race, and just got unfortunate in a wreck. But yeah, we like to get everybody in. We got Clint this year. He's kind of our asphalt guy, so he's helping us out a little bit. But if we get all 4 in, then we'll go from there. I'm not too worried about our race setup, honestly. If we can get that qualifying down, make it in, we'll be pretty good, I think.
Well, and that's got to feel good to have that in your back pocket. We were talking yesterday, because I have to bring it up. The reasoning for the sim team name. Bowerman said to ask you.
Yeah, it's me and Dave started this team almost a little over a year ago. When we decided to do it, we were trying to think of some good, clever names, and we came up with all kinds of stupid stuff. And Sofa King sounded the best. If you say it the right way, it's got the right meaning to it. We got the Sofa King special car out here, which I think fits us all pretty well because we're a special bunch. We don't race to win or go out and win the Pro Series or even make the Pro Series. We just try to have a good time and have fun with each other, and I think that's what we do the best. We've got one of our other secret weapons laying in the wings that he's only come out a couple times now. Old Barry McCockiner, and
I've seen him actually win a couple of UDSS races. So
I tell you what, that guy either wins or gets wrecked. He there's no second or third place for him. It's either a winner or a wrecker, and it's usually because he's winning, someone wrecks him. But he's brought Jack Mehoff Racing Engines on board with this, and he's got a crew chief holding 2 dicks. We can't without those. We couldn't. Well, that's probably why we're on top of the board, or not top, but up top. We brought the Mehoff Racing Engines out here tonight.
Well, and the funny thing is that I got my introduction with you through UDSS through a sprint car series that you guys run, which is still such a fun run to league to run, and looking forward to getting back and doing more of that in the near future. But when I first met you, I really hadn't talked to you very much, and you got me hooked up with Ashley Zimmerman, who did a couple of articles on some sim racing stuff, did one on you that I guess you absolutely hate doing because you hate self-promotion because you're refusing to be a corporate shill. She always said, the only thing she ever said was, you don't like to talk.
Sometimes I don't. If you get me going, I won't shut up. But yeah, the corporate shill thing, I sometimes say the wrong thing, so I don't do real well with sponsors and stuff like that. Which is probably the whole Sofa King Fast Sim Sport deal there.
Well, you know, hopefully though, I know you're like me. You've got real world aspirations as well. You've been in some midgets and TQs and things like that previously. When do we see Billy Brickley back out on the racetrack?
I don't know. It feels like it's been a long, long time. I was watching the shootout a little bit ago, and I know you hate that place.
Were you looking at it like I was, thinking that, you know, you're thankful that you're at home watching it, not there, you know, beating your brains in?
See, I miss it really bad. My problem is the first time I went to Tulsa, I finished second, one spot out of a driller, so I have that bad taste in my mouth, and I can't get it out.
I've got a buddy of mine that did the exact same thing. He's ran there one time, and he won his heat race from like 5th, won his qualifier from 3rd or 4th, and started on the pole with a stock non-wing main, led a bunch of laps, and ran second. He's like, I'm never going back. I'm like, why? I'm like, you were close to winning. He goes, because it'll never happen again. Ever. That's just how that building works.
Yeah, so I did that the first time I went. And the second time I got taken out in a qualifier, won the V main by a lot, and then pulling onto the track for the A, you know, you make the little turn down the ramp, and tie rod broke. So didn't even get to start the second time I went. I haven't been back since.
Well, hopefully you can get back there soon. I know if you do, you're gonna have a hell of a cheering section. From all of us sim racers. There's a bunch of us out there. Saw Mason Hannigan and a few other guys out there this year. But when Billy Brickley makes his return, I definitely got to see it. It's one of those things I have to see.
One of these days, I might actually pull the trigger and rent a chili bowl ride. I hate the price of those things, but that's on my bucket list of things I want to do.
You only live once. Just tell Ashley to sell a horse. She'll do it.
Yeah, right.
She'll do it.
That would be nice, but I want to get back in I want to get in a 410. I've never been in one, but that's my real goal, is to get in a wing 410 and run locally over here in Illinois, Iowa area. So we'll see if it ever happens. I don't know. It's so expensive anymore. It's just, man.
I'm telling you, I've said it to you multiple times. You can run a non-wing and 410 or non-wing 410 in Indiana for pretty cheap, and then you can run around with Baden Stewart a little bit.
I know. Right. I got to drive all the way over to Indiana every weekend. I already drive a semi now. That's a lot of driving. Hey,
then you're used to it. It's all good, man. You're used to the big school bus steering wheels. You get yourself some T-Mez action going, you're going to be in good shape.
And see, I did a lot of non-wing midget mini sprint stuff over here. We ran TQs and that D2 stuff, so I enjoy it. I liked wing a little bit more, but the non-wing's definitely fun.
Well, we're watching Billy Bowerman out there making some laps, so we'll let you get back out there with him, but and start turning some more and try to get him up to a little bit faster speed, which he's actually up to 15th on the board today, so not too bad. You guys are sitting in pretty good shape, but we'll let you get going and get back to practice.
Yeah, thanks. We were running a train earlier, me, Clint, and Tyler, and Bowerman wasn't invited to the party, apparently. He was a little upset about it. So he was crying. We had to go over there and give him a hug and change his depends, but hopefully he'll catch on here in a little bit.
Be nice to Brickley. He's got baseballs and pool to deal with, so...
Yeah, plus he's like 75 or something.
He's the elder statesman of the fake 500. So
yeah, he is.
So, but we'll see you guys here soon, and good luck the rest of the week.
All right, thanks, guys.
And that's Billy Brickley once more from the Sofa King Special Machine. Currently, he and his team scattered amongst the board so far. 27 cars are currently still on the racetrack, and you heard a little bit of him there. Baden Stewart has now joined us. Baden, your thoughts on how things have played out so far, where James Tiernan and Skylar Brown, again, among your top quickest drivers so far, approaching halfway through the session.
Yeah, if I said I was surprised, I'd be lying. I'm thinking we're going to see something really, really, really good start to shape up here between old Tierbo and Skylar. I think those two are going to put on a really good show here. They've got the speed they did last year. I don't think they got quite as much recognition as they should have last year for the speed that they have, but this year they're out in full force. We know that Tiernan really feels like he has, I guess, something to prove. He was really, really fast last year. He was in contention. He had a very real shot at winning the race, and that just didn't play out for him. I think Skylar has his notes from, as he said yesterday, his notes from last year about what got him in trouble, what he needs to avoid. And I believe we're going to see new form on race day for Skylar, but he's got the speed, and I think those two are going to be really, really fun to watch.
And I'm interested still on how some of these air drivers have been tuning themselves on Ford. Some, they are slowly finishing up for the night, like Carl Burke has put his car into the garage area for now. Justin Carey's wrapped up for the time being, for example. But for others, the work has been going on upwards of 90 minutes for some of these competitors. Dallas Breeze, he's continued to work hard throughout this session. Christopher Tate, we've seen moments ago, working hard. Tyler Kendall hit the track a little while ago. He's hitting the track for his first laps of the entire session. In lap 15, Lance Spomberg is still among the drivers trying to figure how to get 20 miles an hour speed down the straights. There's different levels of preparation throughout this entire field, as well as those drivers looking to tune what they've got so far from what they've seen yesterday. Keep in mind, the track hasn't heated up as quick as yesterday. It's only 121 degrees Fahrenheit. It rose quickly yesterday up to that 125 peak.
And I think really we're seeing some more really high track temps. This is a lot different than we saw last year. Compared to yesterday, our ambient is up just a hair, but the track temp is about the same, fairly consistent as far as your weather goes. I believe wind is up a little bit from yesterday, but all things considered, we're seeing similar times to what we did yesterday. And I think as we move towards the end of this session and into tomorrow, we're going to see even more single car runs. That's going to really become the big focus. One car, 4 laps. That's what we're going to see a lot of here.
Yes, indeed. And we mentioned Tyler Kendall is among the drivers on the racetrack. A 48.3 is currently the quickest time for him throughout this session so far. It's going to get interesting, as keep in mind, he was hit on the access road among the drivers in preparation for all this throughout this grouping. Your thoughts on Tyler Kendall, real quick, Baden?
I think Tyler has a lot of speed. Last year, he got the shaft a little bit, got unlucky. One of those deals. That's part of it. You can't avoid that all the time. But he definitely got bit last year. But I think he's going to find some speed. He was pretty decent last year. I think Tyler Kendall's going to be all right here. He's Indiana sprint car driver, so I got the utmost faith in him. That's one of those guys, you'd really like to see do good. Common face around the Nolan crew too. Gotta hope to see him get some speed here.
I think he's also looking forward to speaking with you. He's now standing by. In fact, right now on the radio.
Oh boy. Tyler Kendall, can you hear me?
I got you. How's it going?
Oh, pretty good. How about yourself?
I'm good.
All right, Tyler. What are we thinking here? How are we looking? How are we feeling?
I don't know. My race set feels pretty good. I think it drives well. It feels a little boggy maybe. My qualifying set is super, super, super tight right now.
Super duper duper tight.
Track's pretty hot, but yeah, 121. Yeah, I'm real tight with my qualifying set.
You're seeing some track temps that are a little on the new side, if we're being honest here. That's pretty hot compared to what we saw a lot of last year. So I'll take it. Are you going the same route as most guys are? You're pretty well starting where you ended last year and building off of that.
Yeah, for sure. Right now I'm right off my qualifying set pretty much from last year with like pretty much just a couple air pressure changes.
I got you. One thing been trying to ask a couple of the guys here. We know that they've made some changes to heat retention in the surface as far as the iRacing model goes, and then a few tweaks to the car. Have you felt any big swings in the way the thing's behaving?
So there was tweaks to the Lotus?
Very, very minor. I don't think it was any big swings, but there were some small tweaks.
Yeah, no, I really wasn't even aware there was tweaks. I haven't noticed anything crazy. I mean, I've been practicing a little bit, and I ran some with Skylar too, and I feel like we've been pretty good. But I'd never set the track at 120, so I'm trying to do anything now to gain a little bit more.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of guys have gotten a big curveball there, but that's one thing that's really been interesting me here. I know that everybody's got their stuff really, really refined so far for this, and I was wondering, those changes, they weren't huge, but I was wondering if anybody really noticed big swings in them.
Yeah, not that I have seen.
That's really interesting. So Tyler, Indiana sprint car driver. That's pretty well the pinnacle. Tell us a little bit about your real life racing. What are you planning on doing this year?
So this year we're gonna still go more on the local side. Circle City is gonna open up, I think, in Indianapolis, and that's kind of real close to my parents and where our car's at the shop in Connorsville. And I think that'll make it a little easier traveling wise for one more year. And then if we have a good year, maybe we'll try the USAC deal if we can maybe get a little more help.
I mean, you might as well. I hear that the Nolans have an empty pavement sprint car ride. Is Tyler Kendall going to try to get in that?
I'm always trying.
Here, there's a Silver Crown car, too.
I know. Supposedly it's not full either, but hopefully they get somebody in it that can go out and get them a bunch of wins.
I think we all know that they have a couple of them. Me and you, Dream Team next year. Let's go.
Let's do it.
Let's make it happen.
We need to call our people.
Let's make some phone calls. Let's make this happen, Tyler. I think we could sell some T-shirts.
Me too. Be the life of the party.
Before we let you go, I got two things. One, do you still have, this is Billy, by the way, do you still have that sweet, sweet Skyline sponsorship for Lawrenceburg?
Always.
See,
I do.
We parked next to Tyler Kendall, what was that? That wasn't this past year, that was the year before. Down at Lawrenceburg one night, and he just kind of, hey, you guys hungry? Like, look at me, I'm always hungry. And he's like, well, we got Skyline in the trailer if you want some. And I'm like, oh, well, I'm just figuring it's whatever. It's just somebody making chili dogs. No, there was a crock pot full. And they were like, just eat everything you want. I think between me and Dallas and a few of us, we probably ate 20 chili dogs. But the other one that I've been wanting to ask you, we ran Gas City with Scotty in the dirt car one time this year.
Oh,
and the race is over. It was we'll call it a flub on both of us. We both sucked that night, for lack of better terms. Frustrating evening. And I'm kind of head down, dejected, go back to the trailer, and I notice, well, Scotty's not back, so this is weird. So I take off in the four-wheeler thinking something broke. And Scotty and Tyler Kendall are bumper to bumper in the middle of turns 3 and 4 with Scotty on the racetrack, and he looked rather animated. And I was like, what in the world happened?
Animated, he was pissed.
So he comes off the racetrack, and I said, what the hell happened? He said, oh, it was just a misunderstanding. I'm like, no, what happened? He said, I thought Tyler ran into me after the checkered was over, so I locked the brakes up, and we were going to have a discussion about it because I wasn't very happy to begin with.
And it made me look like an idiot because that's exactly what it looked like. Like, that is exactly what it... But really what happened was I came off of 2, and, I was like... And it was, instantly after the checker, and I was ready to get the fuck off the... Oh, sorry. Get off the racetrack. And what I did was I just came out too and burped the gas kind of, and Scotty's bumper was all the way down, it was broke, all the way down, dragging. And somehow, dude, my front bumper snagged that thing dragging at the back and got on his nub. And all I noticed next, I was caught to him. I was like, "This is not gonna be good. This is gonna be bad."
Tyler,
He got out pissed.
One question: did you enjoy riding Scotty Hampton's nub?
Hopefully, that's the last time I'm on his nub.
But I
tell you
laughed
this
about
right
that. I laughed about that the entire way home because I was like, I know Tyler, and I know that he didn't do that on purpose, and like I know he feels bad about it, and I know Scott feels bad about getting out of the car to scream at him too.
Oh yeah, that was terrible. That was an awkward situation. Oh, it's funny.
Oh wow.
All I was concerned with was if it screwed up the chili dog hookup. That was really my
No.
only concern.
Definitely not. No
I'm pretty
friendships are in that.
I'm pretty well sold that if we can't put together our dream team, you can expect to see Baden Stewart loitering around Tyler Kindle's trailer trying to get a free chili dog.
I like it. As long as you got the mullet.
Well, but back to the fake 500. You probably you were the Jigger Sorois Award winner last year for an incident on pit lane or on the access road.
Yeah.
What for those that didn't get to the unfortunate to watch that last year? What happened?
I just remember I was talking to Dan. He was my spotter, and he would just come out and he was like, "Hey, there's cars coming off two, and I'm like, "All right, we're good." And I'm on the bottom, and the next thing I know, like I'm kind of like looking in my mirror, and I'm still on the bottom, and then I just see him spinning out. And I'm like, "Oh, this isn't good," and then I just get crushed, and then can't even drive the car back to the pit. Really, when I get it back, it's like 2-hour wait or something. I was like, "Damn, that's it." And that happened quick, like real fast.
Well, hopefully we don't. I must say, I only asked that question because Zane Scott Race Promoter told me to ask.
That's so cool. I
it's
told
my-
Tyler that question was coming.
It's my favorite moment from last year's race. You got money on it. You at least got money out of the deal, like $25.
Yeah, true. And I was just what made me so mad is I was so amped for that, and then it happened so early. I was like, that really just happened. That like I don't know, it was wild how fast it happened.
Kevin Hamlin just lost it off turn 2, and unfortunately, as he was spinning to the inside, here was Tyler Kindle coming back on the track after just using his fast repair, and that was the end for Tyler Kindle's fake.
But hopefully you make it into the race this year and don't have the same troubles. Can go over and I know he's not with the Nolans anymore, but go over and rub those cars that Mr. Swanson has sat in for the last couple of years. Make sure you rub those to try to get some of the good luck off of them.
Yeah, I need to grab some speed from him.
Well,
And serious, thank you guys for putting on the event. It's a lot of fun, and I know we all look forward to it.
well, thank you very much, Tyler, and we'll let you get back to practice. But good luck the rest of the week, and we'll see you on Saturday when you go to qualify.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
It's Tyler Kendall once again, currently second to last on the board. We apologize for the language used from him during that interview, but it was still an interesting and characteristic interview. Keep in mind that these drivers will be joined currently on the racetrack by two more in the near future. Adam Blocker, Keith Jeffrey among the drivers currently at the track gate, ready to make their way to Indianapolis Motor Speedway's pit paddock/pit road in preparation for this race. Approaching 90 minutes left in the session, approaching cross flags up in the air. Top 5 still remain the same so far, as several drivers have already put up upwards of 70 laps. That being James Tiernan, currently your leader in the lap count ticker, followed by Billy Bowerman with the 65 lap total. Chris Springer, Skylar Brown, Lance Spomberg with 56. Tied up with Brown, rounds out the top 5 in that grouping. So tons of time being put in across this racetrack here, Baden.
Yeah, it's all about getting in your rhythm, seeing what you can learn. Time is of the essence here. That's all it boils down to. You got to get learn as much as you can, and it may seem like a lot of rolling around and making lap after lap after lap, but you learn something new every time, and that's so important right now. These guys have got to build their notebook, and just these hot temperatures, they're new, It's a new wild card for these guys, so you got to get as much knowledge of that as you can while it's there. Again, weather's always changing. You're always chasing it. But if you can get good notes out of this, it's always important to have. So, we're seeing some interesting stuff here. And we're about halfway through now. So, about a half hour from happy hour, and that's when this stuff gets real exciting.
Yeah, and speaking of exciting, Josh Chin and James Tiernan kind of hooking up and doing some laps, which getting into some race trim type stuff. We were seeing, I'm looking at the speeds right now. Chris Springer 202 miles an hour at the end of the straightaway. Joshua Chin right around 200. So straightaway speeds definitely up from yesterday. Cornering speeds down a little bit, as we're not seeing anybody in the 46 seconds yet. But track is picking up big time as far as activity. Majority of the cars on the track right now, all turning pretty solid laps.
Yes, indeed. Currently looking at some of the times across the track, the consistent mark is around the 47 6s through the 8s. For just about everybody turning laps as one car spins and one more flips. That's Billy Brickley, and our car spins. Everybody's spinning out. That's Christopher Tate, who are among the drivers still trying to continue to group things out as he gets smacked by Chris Springer. But back to that grouping involving Chin and company. Knowing that your car cannot afford snaps like that to send him up in the sky during race time. We mentioned getting everything out of the system. Is there a limit of saying, okay, I think I got everything out of the system, then you realize, okay, the system is kind of locked in to how do I make sure I unlock the lock, so to speak, of crash, 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 flip up in the sky, crash.
Well, I think it's just like you go through a crashing spell when you're trying to find that limit. We see guys a lot in practice sessions where, especially on dirt races where, you may have to go run the wall for 30 laps to where you're going to crash a lot in practice. Indianapolis is the same thing because you have to run the car such on that ragged edge between, loose and into the wall. You've got to make sure that the car will get turned into the corner properly, and you've got to make sure that it exits okay and doesn't get too awful free. So there is it doesn't shock me to see guys go out and lose the car necessarily on the basis of that's when you try to find the limit in these practice sessions. That's the beauty of iRacing. It's click the reset button and you got a brand new ride sitting there. So it's a lot easier to find the limit, truthfully, as Tiernan gets into the fence just a little bit off of turn number 2. So the wind is starting to break havoc there. But I don't think there's I do think, though, you can get yourself into a rut, though, of just going out, turning laps, getting yourself into the fence, resetting, and keeping redoing it. You do have to make sure that the practice laps, like we were talking about yesterday, are valuable practice laps. That's the most important thing. And when you're trying to find that edge, crashing is going to be a big thing. But finding the key to that lock when you get stuck kind of in that mode, sometimes it's just a reset of walking away, getting off the racetrack for a little bit, getting something cool to drink and just kind of chilling out for a minute, see what some other guys are doing, and going from there.
Indeed. Just past cross flags up in the air here for today's Brent Marks Racing Sim Team Practice. Currently, let's quickly run through your top 10 of the moment. Once again, it is James Tiernan at the top of the board, still with that 47.087, still in the 191 mile an hour bracket. Only driver that's gone in towards that mark so far. Then a 47.143 with the 190.9 mile an hour time by Skylar Brown, Clint Stone, Stephen Hill, Chris Springer, still your top 5. Brickley, Burke, Keiko, Grafton, Click, still your top 10. Want to support the fake 500? Still chances to do so. Lap times or laps are available for sponsorship for $1 a piece. Mega supporters since last night. Raw King sponsoring 10 lap blocks twice over. In preparation for this event, he's one of the drivers looking to qualify his way in one of the full send graphics machines later on throughout the week. For more information, visit Elbows Up Sim Sport on Facebook today. And it's always great to have the support of the fans for an event such as this. And I know some of the fans have been following along to see how some of their favorite drivers have been doing. And some of them have looked very confident, to say the very least, Billy. It's great to see the support coming in from a lot of the fans and, and some of the competitors, too.
Yeah, it is. Just saw here Ronnie Werdeman. He's a Silver Crown driver out of Cincinnati, Ohio. He's checking in. This is an event right up his alley. I know if his work schedule was a little bit different, he would definitely be in the qualifying field. At least he did his first full-time Silver Crown campaign this year. There wasn't many advantages of COVID. But the one shining moment I think through that was the resurrection of the Hoosier 100 at the Indiana State Fairgrounds, and it was a very emotional moment standing on top of the spotter board, watching Ronnie turn laps around that place. I know it's something that me and him had really truthfully dreamed of for as long as I've known him, and to be able to be on the radio kind of coaching him through his first season has been pretty good. So very nice to see. I was checking out on Twitter a little bit ago. It was good to see Brent Marks getting this retweeted out to those people that are coming in. And again, we talked about it a little bit last night, where a lot of people are new to sim racing. It's not something that they've really spent a lot of time messing with. You wouldn't really think about it in a lot of cases, that it's something that you may enjoy watching, but the race last year was absolutely phenomenal. You can find that on the Turn 3 network on YouTube. As a matter of fact, we simulcast there last year and had an absolute great time. It was a great race. Really felt like Indianapolis. So, but it's good to see a lot of the fan involvement from people outside of sim racing, and that do some sim racing as well. But checking out these broadcasts for the first time and seeing what all is out there.
And keep in mind, it's not apples to crossover, because how long, for example, did it take you guys, first Billy, then Baden, to get used to the sim? Because some say, oh, I immediately picked up a wheel and I'm immediately quick. Others, it takes years for some, Billy.
Yeah. My brother, kind of going back a little bit, but my brother, Chris, he's the one that got me started in racing. I didn't really know anything about it. I knew I wanted to race and all that, but didn't really have a way in. And my brother started running go-karts down in Waco, Texas, and he ran for 20-odd years running go-karts and shifter karts nationally. He's ran all over the country against some of the best in the world, and evolved into micro sprints in the dirt, and had an absolute blast. But getting older and some fatigue and some previous racing injuries, the doctors basically told him, look, you need to not be in a race car anymore. And like a lot of guys do, struggled with that and didn't want to give up racing, really loved it. But he went and sold his race car and went out and bought himself an iRacing rig. And for somebody like him, it's taken a while because he's such a seat-of-the-pants driver. It's taken him some time to figure out, really how to drive on the sim comparatively to real life. Now that he's comfortable, he's found that it's actually pretty close. He can run some of these tracks that he's been to in real life and remember, okay, that's my braking point and this and that. He's picked it up fairly quick as far as lap times go. Then you see other guys that it really is a struggle because they can't feel the car. There is that feeling of not being able to feel exactly what the car is doing at every moment in time, which is a big piece of racing in general. But for me personally, when I got onto the sim 2 or 3 years ago now, I wouldn't say that I took to it, rather easily, but having that real world knowledge and that real world experience of knowing what the car should feel like really did help me out quite a bit. And I know others that, we mentioned Scott Hampton before, a great sprint car driver in my opinion in the state of Indiana, and he is awful at iRacing. He cannot make a lap around a racetrack if you paid him. And it's not necessarily because he doesn't like it. It's just he just has a very hard time feeling what the car is doing. So it does make a big difference how your rig is set up, how serious you're going to take it. I know my brother, he went out and bought himself a pretty solid rig with a motion deal and everything, so it's extremely close and it's scratching the itch for him. But Baden's been on iRacing longer than I have, running a lot of weird stuff that he always does. But he takes a lot of the different things like a duck to water. I know he ran one of his first 410 sprint car leagues a couple of months back with us and stuck her in the show. So Baden's starting to get there as well. But you kind of have the same thought process as I do. Everybody's a little bit different, but it seems like if you're a real driver and you really progress and take it for what it is, you can really get faster or you can get up to speed faster than what somebody that necessarily wouldn't have that experience before.
And yeah, I'd agree with that. Personally, I still struggle a lot with it because I'm so used to feeling what the car's doing, and when the only feedback you're getting through the wheel, it's a little bit on the foreign side for you. So it's been, and like Billy said, I've had it longer than he has, and there's times where it's so odd to not feel what the car is doing, and it's a very odd deal. It feels like some stuff for me, I almost have to just run lap after lap after lap after lap to where I can predict what the car is going to do. So when we get there, the hands are anticipating what's going to happen as opposed to feeling it and reacting. I guess it's more, sometimes with this, it's a little more proactive than reactive, but it's a different deal. But it is really cool. Like Billy said, it's also a fun outlet where I can get on here and try weird stuff that wouldn't happen in real life. You know, one
like
day
a pavement sprint car at Monza.
This has happened, and Le Mans. It's a lot of fun. If you haven't done it, you ought to. But, you know, sometimes you hit on something. One day I sat down and said, ooh, a Lotus 79 will look cool going around Indianapolis, and here we are. But it's a lot of fun. I enjoy iRacing for the fact that, you know, you have a lot of those real-world adjustments. It's challenging for me at times to not be able to see what the car's doing. Some stuff you've never seen in real life, so it's a little odd to try to figure out exactly how each corner of the car looks, what you're really doing. But it's a lot of fun to be able to have those real life aspects that make it challenging, and that's a lot of the fun in it. But like I said, there's a lot of guys that hopped on iRacing and they are insanely quick, and there's times where I feel like it's almost like a different form of driving. It's a different style, it's a different type, almost like running a different division. It's a totally different way of racing and driving that's you know, foreign to some guys, where I'm so used to feeling what the car is doing. I don't have that here, and there's guys that are used to that, and they are insanely good.
Well, and to kind of echo off of that, or piggyback off of it a little bit, a good friend of ours, Cody Downard, him and his family bought a mini sprint. I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago. He'd never raced anything before, and while they were getting the car together, he picked up iRacing, and he ran, you know, R Factor and things like that before, but never really anything too awful serious. And when he started running iRacing more, you know, you learn to drive the car with your hands. You don't, you know, I've always said, at least in the dirt side of things, you don't get into a sprint car. You strap a sprint car to you, and it has to be. You have to become one with the car in order to be fast. And the way that the sim works is it's not really like that. So you learn to drive it with your hands and learn to know the feelings with the force feedback and all that sort of thing. The great thing that Cody told me was, he said, when I got into a real race car for the first time, I already felt what I was feeling in my hands, but then I also got to feel it in the rest of my body. So he thinks it's made him a better driver, being able to learn learn directly with the sim going to real life, as far as going as compared to going from real life to the sim. So it's made him a little bit better of a driver in his eyes. I've gotten to see him race a few times, and he's extremely good. Extremely good. So whenever you can get that seat of the pants feel, but then also already know how to drive with your hands and get a lot of that feeling with your hands and the feedback of the car, that's a pretty important piece.
And
There's a- Sorry for jumping in here on that too. I was going to say too, that's I think why there's the saying, you get a direct drive wheel, you gain a 1,000 I rating almost, Baden, because that's one of the efforts by different equipment manufacturers now, is trying to give you that feel if you are willing to pay the price.
Correct. And, you can draw a lot of parallels between this and real life racing, and that's one of them. If you want to be fast, you got to have the equipment. So it's really cool. And there, one thing about, we all know that there's this, I wouldn't say rift, but just this weird divide over stuff like iRacing. Personally, I do enjoy it, and I think that it's a good way to get. There's not much racing you can do through the winter, and as far as, especially around here in Indiana, we're not going to see the sun until hopefully March. So there's not any racing you can do, but this is a good way to keep. You can work on stuff like racecraft on here, and it's a good way to keep yourself in that, I guess, mindset, to mess with racing, because it's a good, fun way, because we all want to mess with race cars all the time. It's a good way to continue to do that when it turns off cold and there's nothing going on. And you see that with a lot of the guys running this right now. There's nothing else going on right now. A lot of the real life drivers that don't have anything to do, they're on here doing this because it's realistic, it's fun, they enjoy it, and it kind of, like Billy has said a few times over the last couple of days, it scratches that itch. And I do think there's a lot you can learn with this. You can pick up on visuals, and you can learn some stuff through this. And at the end of the day, there's a reason that big money teams put drivers in simulators. It's a way to get track time. Is it a one-to-one transfer of what's going to happen in a real car? No, but you can still learn stuff, and that's the cool and fun part about it. It's never going to replace the real thing, but it's a good outlet.
Well, and it's, I think, a good tool. It's a very good tool, actually. I know of a few guys when I worked at a place in Indianapolis that did simulation work, that they would have gentleman drivers, that would go to Sebring and run a Lamborghini or a Ferrari and never been to Sebring before. They would literally go and run the simulator work to learn braking points, because the braking points that are on the sim, or on a road course at least, they're the same as what they are in real life. It's very, very similar. So you can get yourself up to speed quicker by running those types of things. I mentioned it yesterday, talking about Ronnie and a little bit today, but when he went to Eldora for the first time, he rolled out, and the first thing he said was, when he keyed up the mic before practice. He's just rolling around for practice, and he's just rolling around, and he said, "Billy, it feels like I've been here before." And to me, that was pretty cool, because he said, I can feel certain areas of the track, like, there's a little bit of a hump getting into turn one that helps the car turn in, that you don't really see from a fan perspective, but you can feel it on iRacing. So there's a lot of things that you can learn. Is it going to make you a great sprint car driver? No. Or, a Lotus 79 driver around Indianapolis? No. But I do firmly believe that if a Lotus 79 was to run around Indianapolis, any one of these guys that are in this field could get in that car and feel like they've been there before, and at least have kind of an idea of what it's supposed to do or what it would do. So it's the sim, to me, is a very very important tool that I think a lot of people misunderstand. You know, nobody in the history of the world has ever wanted a iRacing race to take over real racing. We all love real racing for a lot of reasons. You know, danger, speed, the sounds, the smells, everything that we love about racing is all still there. But this is just another avenue. A lot of times, you know, James Tiernan, who's at the top of the board right now, he's one that his family has ties back to Roger Ward's family. You know, who Roger Ward has won this race before, the Indianapolis 500, that is. And he would love to be in a race car, but right now it's just not in the cards. So it's one of those things that, you know, once you realize that iRacing is not here to steal anything, it's only here to add. And the amount of people that I've gotten to come to sprint car races from iRacing that have said, man, you know, they've watched these World Championship races on Monday nights and gone, this race was phenomenal. And it's like, well, if you think that was cool, make sure you go to a real track sometime and check that out. And they've gone and they've absolutely loved it. So iRacing is a great marketing tool, but it's fun, and that's what it's supposed to be. So the more that people get invested in that way, the better off it is for absolutely everybody.
And another mark that I feel like is worth noting, we live in this age of a lot of the technical aspects of what goes on in a top-level race car that people are tuning into national television to watch on a weekend, you don't see. There was a point in Indianapolis where you saw the changes, because somebody would get a wild hair and build a car powered by a Pratt & Whitney turbine, or start bolting wings onto stuff just to see what would happen. You don't have that anymore. So I think that there is this amount where a fan can get on iRacing and they're able to see what goes into it, into the actual aspects of racing. They get more appreciation for it, and it gives them a better understanding of what they're watching on TV. And I think that's an important outlet in this day and age, is to have informed fans, because there's so much about racing as far as the technical aspects go that's really, really intriguing. But when you don't get to see that part and that whole side of it, it's lost, and there's a massive amount of appreciation that you just can't have. And I think this is a way to give people that understanding and that appreciation, and be able to watch for some of this more technical stuff that makes it really exciting to watch some of these races.
Agree with you indeed on all those points, guys. And it's, again, been incredible the growth we've seen in 2020 when it comes to sim racing and its importance here. Still, drivers on track right now are James Tiernan, Stephen Hill, Shane Keiko, Tower Grafton, Tower Street, Mike Rasmus, Christopher Tate, Dallas Breeze, Rylan Gray, Juan Pablo Luis, Kyle Dagger are among those competitors so far. And you can see with the times, they've stuck status quo. But, as mentioned, drivers have always mentioned this towards me, because sometimes you look at that board and think, I've got to get up there. I've got to get up there almost. That's kind of something I've personally, as a driver on the sim at times, get stuck into, Baden. But as people will tell you, and this is from someone like Kale Gale who's told me this, where it's not about the times overall, it's where your car is on the racetrack on race day that decides the running order, essentially.
And that's absolutely true. You know, you can go out and set the world's fastest lap, but if you can't do that 2 laps in a row, it doesn't matter. There's one point in the weekend where that matters, but you show up to race, not qualify. So, you know, it's a big ego boost. Everybody wants to be quick time, but you're here to race. And right now I'm noticing, I don't know when the last time I saw James Tiernan on his own was. And I think some of these guys that are towards the top of the board that know they have the speed right now are now working on setup in traffic and seeing what the car is going to do in dirty air. I've seen James Tiernan around cars a lot, and I think that's kind of the route that he's taken. I think some of these other guys are following in the same footsteps because they know they've got the speed for qualifying, and there's a point where it's not worth chasing anymore. You've got what you need to make the show. Let's shift our focus, and that's a good spot to be in when you're ahead of the curve like that, and you kind of, these guys that have ran it last year, they have an idea of what they're going to be looking at come qualifying as far as speeds go, and they know that they're there. They know that they're safe where they're at. So now the focus has shifted, and that's really interesting to see right now. And that, I think, is going to be a tell on who is really, really comfortable and happy with what they have and is trying to get ahead of the curve on race trim. And this is something really cool to watch, as Tiernan, like I said, I believe is trying to pull that off right now. And there's a couple other guys that are following in the same footsteps.
Those footsteps seem to be getting louder and louder. Eventually, you'd have to think there's going to be one of those signature pit parties we've talked about that could bring tons of drivers to circuit. Of note, by the way, we are now up to 30 drivers who have, at the very least, appeared at the racetrack. Chase Rodman expected to hit the track in the near future here. Keith Jeffrey has not hit the track in turn so far. Approaching the request for pit parties. In fact, just now, James Tiernan wants a pit party, and they are starting to line up on the pit road potentially for one of our first big pit parties of the week for practice, coming in the final hour plus the Brent Marks Racing Sim Team practice. Drivers are currently lining up down the pit road, and that's why you're seeing all these drivers pull off the racetrack. And this is going to be a big test for some of these drivers once they line up for this pit party, if they elect to choose to do it. You can already see at least 7 or 8 are electing to choose to do it.
Yeah, this is where we're really going to start seeing a lot of guys make these race trim runs. And good for these veterans to and rookies alike to get acclimated to running in traffic with more than just 1 or 2 cars in a line. So this is where the biscuits get made or burnt, depending on how you look at it. But it's good practice to come off of pit road as well. We talked about that earlier, where it can get pretty sketchy coming off as a narrow piece. But here we are, a train, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 guys, all making their way out onto the racetrack all at once.
Monda's train, James Tiernan, Chase Rodman, Billy Breckley, Rylan Gray, Tyler Street, your first qualifier this upcoming weekend, Tyler Grafton, Clint Stone. Christopher Tate was the back-end car, but he just lost the back-end of his car into the grass in front of the second grouping of cars who went rolling. So this is where it gets intriguing with how the draft snakes will come into play as well. A lot of them came into play during some of the later stages of the practice with groupings of 5 cars. Now with this group, it's to where you get your first real sense of race trim outside of your own teammates potentially in this grouping. We're already seeing big arrow wash from some of these cars.
Yeah, and this is where you find out what you have. You know, you can run around one car and get an idea, but this is where you really know what you're going to have in traffic, what you can get away with, what you can do. You know, as we approach happy hour, we're going to see some more of this pop up, and I think we're going to get some entertainment here. We got one car backwards in turn 3 there. As the field's starting to split up, you know, this is going to be some of the stuff you see on race day. I think you'll see guys practicing setting up runs, seeing what they can pull off there. This is one of the interesting parts of this deal. You know, we see who's fast and who's looking for speed, but right now you're going to see who is good in race trim, and this is what really matters. This is some of the important parts you see right now. James Tiernan, very, very strong, rolling around the outside. That's important here. If you can have that stability and speed around the outside here, that is massive. If you can open up another lane that you can make work, that goes a long, long ways here. And I think Tiernan showing him what he's got doesn't really surprise me. He likes to be a little on the bold side. I think Billy would agree. Not really surprising that he'd be out there flexing on him, but I think we're going to see who's really got the race trim, the pace, and the balance right now.
See a little bit of a spin and a bit of trouble now as Billy Brinkley loses the back
Save
end.
it. There you go. See, that's what we like to see. Danny Sullivan, the spin and win. Way to catch it, Billy. But, you know, it kind of... We've talked about James a lot over the last couple of days, but I think it's all, you know... If you look at the way that his car handles on the top side of the racetrack, that's a very, very big piece because you're going to be in traffic 99.9% of the day. Even when you're out front leading this thing, you're still going to be in traffic, as it looks like they're getting ready to catch up on Ryland Gray there just a little bit. But and side note to James's car, if you've been around Indianapolis before, remember Dan Gurney ran the Pepsi Challenger back in 80 and 81, I believe it was. That is the Roofco Challenger. One of our sponsors here, also a sponsor of James as well. So pretty good looking Roofco Challenger as a homage to the Pepsi Challenger back in the day.
By the way, roofing you cannot eat. Just want to note that, or drink, like Pepsi.
Wow.
Yes, I was probably the only person who thought about that in the entire globe, but it's still a nice throwback car.
Well, and I've always, as God is my witness, I've always been a Pepsi guy over Coke. Always.
Agreed.
I don't know why, but
Well,
always was.
Hot takes from the broadcast booth as we move into happy hour here.
Yeah.
We are
Yes.
we are excited for happy hour. We want to double down on the excitement, and we want to start a big old fight.
Yeah, if there's one thing that me and Baden can do, it's get people fired up on Twitter over food.
Oh yeah.
So,
Yeah, and speaking of the throwbacks, keep in mind we mentioned the Sofa King special. Of course, that's a throwback to the cars from the 1970s, which ran in Formula One. With the Lotuses, the John Player special, I think is the exact phrasing I'm thinking of at the top of my head. Might be misremembering that, but it's an iconic paint scheme, and they've all reminisced and went towards that direction. To quote Billy Brinkley, "Why change something that works?"
yeah,
Essentially.
Well, and that's what I do love about this race. We do see some guys that have some pretty wild paint schemes. I know Chris Peterson with his zebra and bright pink cars, but then you've got the Sofa King SimSport guys that are all older, vintage looking race cars. And we saw Kyle May out yesterday in a tribute to Ayrton Senna's. Well, I'm going to call it Senna's, but the Williams cars. So a lot of good vintage racing that I wish more guys would do. I know myself, I had a Brad Doty Stanton 75 scheme that I did for Knoxville Nationals a few years ago. So I wish more guys would do it, but I'm glad that on the Lotus cars, guys are keeping these generally to the vintage form. Well, I'm a nerd. I'll just call it what it is. I'm a nerd for old race cars. There's nothing prettier than a mid '80s almost anything.
I'm gonna disagree. A Watson Roadster.
Okay,
but
if there was a Watson Roadster, on iRacing, hint, the fake 500 would be 1950s style. I will trump. Me and Baden will trump Zane on that all day long because.
Yep, but then you need a Indianapolis Motor Speedway with the bricks that are still all on the front straightaway.
We'll run 62. It'll be
now
62.
we're not. See, Justin, you're coming along just fine with us now. This is what I would love to see, a vintage Indy, or now that we've seen iRacing come out with the iRacing Super Speedway that was on, what was it, NASCAR 2003 years ago. I would love to see them take Indianapolis and throw it back, to the mid-50s with the bricks. And just a lot of the different feels, like an old-school Atlanta that before the trial was put in, blacktop Bristol, things like that would be absolutely... that still keeps the integrity of iRacing there, but just kind of gives us a blast from the past.
Give Indy the apron back. We were talking about paint schemes. One that I do want to hit on, actually two. First one is Justin Carey, possibly one of my favorite cars in the field. Got that Johnny Lightning special going on. And then Tyson Landis with the Photographer's Nightmare special. I don't know if you guys have taken a good look at that.
Is he on track still? Tyson Landis, no, he is not on track, or else he'd show it. But yeah,
I know that Dallas, his eye has to twitch every time he's around that car.
Yeah, it's very, very chrome, but I really, really like it. It's iRacing has done a really good job of giving guys the ability to really make these cars their own. And you know, it's kind of, Justin, you announce a lot of dirt races and a lot of races in general, and you can really pick up on who a driver is just by their paint scheme. It's it's something very unique to iRacing that I think that a lot of people don't think about, but it's such a good time to do.
It's all part of the identity of the driver, big time this year, as well as the way to show off your sponsors properly and have a proper design and show good recognition, as well as essentially credibility to what you can do, in my opinion. And keep in mind, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just absolutely. I think the more professional you keep a paint scheme, you know, the better off it is. I know when I'm designing sprint car or midget paints, I try to keep as true to real life as I could, of thinking, well, this would be on an actual car, or, you know, no, this wouldn't be, and kind of going from there. So, and especially when you load into like a NASCAR server, you know, to go run a Busch Series car, or, you know, or a Nationwide, or whatever the world it is now, a B car, or the
Busch
A car. There's a lot of different paint schemes out there that people really enjoy. From, you know, I saw one the other day of somebody in a Hut Strickland Circuit City car.
Yes.
I was like, that is cool, because that's a car that I always remember as a kid, but you don't see it you don't see it anymore. So it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
Unappreciated detail, I think, so far has really went under the radar. Skylar Brown. If you go to the chase cam, get you a good look at that rear wing. I'm digging it, Skylar. I'm liking it. I like the respect.
For those wondering, that's the number 10 car, second in the practice chart still. It's I Love Pit Lizards is the name of it. Not sure what that is entirely, but I'm guessing you guys do based on the giggles. But he is leading a bunch of people.
Google it. We want your reaction live on camera.
Skylar is one of those guys that, you know, he's one of those guys that loves to have a good time with iRacing, but he's one of those that really takes it serious as well and represents his sponsors well. He's I will say, going on record, that this Lotus 79 is probably the worst template to paint with. On the sim, it is very, very chaotic. So it makes it tricky sometimes, but a lot of these guys have done a heck of a job, you know, with the way that their cars look and the feel of them. Of you get a lot of the personality out of them.
Looked it up. Not going to go there. 55 minutes on the practice charts. James Tiernan, Skylar Brown, Clint Stone, Stephen Hill, Chris Springer, still your top 5. Your top 10 has all stayed locked in throughout this grouping. We are in the midst of happy hour, in the midst of paint scheme discussions, in what is expected to be an intense week and a half plus from here on out. And keep in mind that these paint schemes and their drivers are going to be having to fly around this track in just a couple days from now. Again, to remind you of your top 10 out of qualifying order, and some of these drivers have had some struggles tonight, while others have been getting started, while others have been focusing on this trim. Tyler Street, Chris Peterson, Lance Spomberg, Joshua Chin, Billy Brickley, Chase Rodman, Dustin Griffiths, Kyle May, Dallas Breeze, Bryce Bailey. Majority of those drivers are taking part in practice at the moment, are currently among your drivers in some cases towards the top part of the board. And we mentioned the pressure for the drivers towards the bottom half of the board and those big names. We mentioned some of the reaction at the time of the drawing. We'll get the reactions on how things are now with the day to digest and how the speeds have been faring out right after this. You're watching Elbows Up TV for coverage of Brent Marks Racing Sim Team Practice for the Wicked Energy Go Fate 500.
If I bleed tonight, if I am sad tonight, I don't have a job to find. And
With the Butt Kicker Gamer 2, what you see and what you hear is what you feel. Butt Kicker. The future is feeling.
Back live from the virtual Indianapolis Motor Speedway with 52 minutes on the clock. What has been a productive Brent Marks Racing Sim Team practice here on Elbows Up TV. I'm Justin Brent. Alongside the booth tonight is Zane Scott up in race control as well. Bain Stewart, Billy Rowley also in the director's seat is also with us here in the booth. And what has been a productive session for these drivers. All these drivers are in the midst of preparing for qualifying. In a couple days, we mentioned that top 10 running order just a little bit a while ago, and some of the drivers and some of the heavy hitters. Now that we had a day to digest everything, curious on your thoughts, starting with you, Baden, on what was an interesting draw. We remember the reaction to the second half of that field being very intense and very big because of all the big names back there.
Yeah, I think we're definitely looking at some interesting shakeups as far as qualifying goes. And I am interested because we see some guys that haven't so far been the outright fastest, but have had speed early on. And if this year is a repeat of last year, early is the time to go. You know, you saw it play out a lot like Indianapolis in real life, where you see the guys that go early, they have weather playing in their favor, and then you take your time, and we saw a lot of waiting until the end of qualifying when the track starts to cool back off a little bit. I am interested to see some of these guys, a Joshua Chin, that's going to be really interesting going out fourth here. He is going to be very, very fast. There's no doubt about that. Dustin Griffiths, he's worked with all the elbows up guys. He's going to have some speed. I think that early draw is going to be really good for him. Chase Rodman as well. Kyle May, I think he's going to end up finding some speed. He's working there, and last year he was really close. I think he's going to find what he needs. Dallas Breeze has shown some serious speed for us. Looking down through here, Hank Silver, he's fairly early, followed by Anthony Carini. And then behind those two, James Tiernan. That's one that I'm waiting for. He's a little bit later. But I think even then, James Tiernan is another candidate for front row along with Joshua Chin. Looking down through here, as you start to get towards the middle of the list, you still have some guys that have speed. About smack dab in the middle, you're looking at Kevin Click, last year's winner. Right before him, you have Tyler Kendall. He'll have some speed. Landon Castle, about in the middle of the field. He's going to be close to one of the hotter points in the day. That'll be interesting to see. Those guys had a lot of speed last year. Right behind him is Brian Blackford. That's another guy that's really, really fast, and it'll be interesting to see how the weather plays for those guys. As you move down the list, Tyson Landis towards the bottom, he'll be fast. And then you got down here at the bottom, Dan Zeggers, hanging out down there in last. I know last night he was pretty tore up about it. I believe his exact words were, "I need iRacing to come up with rain in 2 days, or else I'm gonna have a rough day." But I think Dan will be okay. But he was pretty tore up about it yesterday. Emotions were high.
Yeah, Dan was not overly happy with the way that his draw went, but again, the run for the pole, we saw it last year that these guys can make a very late run. We saw Blackford pull out of the time towards the end of the session, so there is going to be some speed still left in the racetrack. I'm fully sure of that. It's just going to matter of, are you going to risk possibly pulling yourself out of a locked-in spot to try to improve, or do you rest on your laurels and see what you got on bump day?
Currently up to 48 minutes on the board. Still interesting to see how this all plays out once again for some of these competitors. You mentioned some of the pressure for Tyler Street. How much do you feel he's having now, since he's Well, to be frank, he's flown in the air 7 times in this session, Baden. And how do you think he's feeling that, you know, he can't afford to do that to start off? That'd be a way to make headlines. It wouldn't be a way to be on the pole, though.
I think he's going to be all right. He had good speed last year. I just hope he's working on the landing. You know, takeoffs are optional, landings are mandatory. I hope he's working on squeaking them on there. You know, that's an important part of it. You got to make sure that you got your landing smooth. Be easy on equipment. You know, if you're going to be upside down that much, you got to make sure that you're going to squeak them on. You know, once you're setting them back on like butter, then you're in business. I think that's going to be the big thing. If that's the route he wants to go, I think that's going to be a big piece of the puzzle, is making sure you're setting the car back down nice and smooth.
Indeed. And some of these drivers have been nice and smooth. Some of them, they've been learning a lot. Want to give a shout out to Lance Sponberg and some of his competitors have been helping him along the way to help with that process. He's since then bumped his way to a 48 flat. He's definitely learning as time has gone on throughout the session, Billy.
Yeah, he's actually, you know, like we said, he ran really good, actually, really competitive in rookie orientation. He got into an early scuffle and didn't take his fast repair like he thought we might, and put himself kind of behind the 8 ball, but he was able to get in as we got some cones on the racetrack, and as we were talking about him, there goes Tyler Street once again. That was a fairly epic takeoff. But it's good to see that other guys are starting to, you know, that are helping out and picking up the pace, and he's getting there. You know, himself, I know Dano Lindsay, he posted in chat, he said this is not a car, it's very loud to run with a headache, so he's parked for the evening. But it's good to see that these guys are helping out, getting guys up to speed more and more throughout these runs. This car, like we said, you know, we've talked about it for 2 days now. This car is extremely difficult to get going fast around Indianapolis. Even if you have the right setup, you still have to be there with driving ability and learning the racetrack, learning the nuances to it, where your entry points are, where the car needs to be placed on corner exit to gain, you know, top speed. So definitely learning. It's good to see him moving up the speed charts a little bit.
Absolutely. Currently, the driver at the bottom of the board, by the way, is Mark Broderick, who's currently running his first laps of the session at a blistering 1 minute and 2 seconds. Also of note, TJ Majors among the drivers now getting ready for his first laps throughout the final hour or so. It is the hottest the track has been the entire night. 124 degrees Fahrenheit now track temp for these competitors. Baden.
Oh, come again. I was reading.
Was going to say the track is continuing to get hotter, and now it's a perfect time to say hello if you're TJ Majors, I guess.
Absolutely. You know, we're seeing today, we're seeing track temps get back to where they were yesterday. This is something that's definitely interesting to see here. We're seeing track temps get back to where they were yesterday. We're seeing where iRacing has been messing with that heat retention in the racing surface. We're seeing that play off here. The ambient has went up 1 degree since the last time we talked about it. I believe we're up 3 or 4 degrees from yesterday. So
yeah,
with as finicky as this car can be, you know, I'm sure there's a few small changes that some of these guys have probably made to cope with a little bit of that. We've seen wins. They're pretty consistent from where they were earlier. You see a lot of guys struggling off of 2 into 3, you know, product of that airspeed dropping as you turn into the wind there. But you turn downwind there, you know, you're losing airspeed. So we've seen some of that, you know, catch a couple guys out so far today. But, you know, another good chance to build your notebook. And right now, these are good notes that these guys in this pack are getting, because if it turns out this hot on race day, you're going to have an idea of what you're looking at. It's pretty important to get some of these little bit different, little odder scenarios and get good notes on them.
Yeah, look at this big pack of cars right now. You can see it's trouble in the pack. Justin Griffith's flipping up into the sky. Was going to say those packs continuing to get bigger and bigger and bigger as this session has gone on. This is one of the bigger packs of the day as some of the teammates decide, you know what, what's crashing down the middle of the front stretch.
Good old Brickley giving Tyler a little bit of extra motivation, we'll call it. Extra motivation, trying to get him a little bit quicker, maybe pump him up a little bit for that qualifying run on Saturday. He should be. I gotta think it's got to be on your mind of being the first qualifier out. You want to be able to set a good pace. You don't want to be the guy that goes and lays an egg or anything like that. But I really, truthfully believe that car has more speed than what we've seen. Just from hearing Billy Brickley talk and Billy Bowerman, that they're pretty comfortable just kind of, playing here and there, trying to get just a little bit more speed if they can.
Absolutely. Who's impressed you the most, Billy, throughout this entire session?
Honestly, really, a guy that, we haven't talked a ton about, but he's on track right now. We'll go on board with him. But Tyler Grafton ran last year and showed some promise, and he's definitely going to be. I think he's in the top 10 still on speed right now, 47.329. Shown good pace. I think he's kind of one of the sleepers in this deal. Looks like he's going to lift a little bit to get himself into this pack to try to figure out what this car is doing in the draft. As he gets a little bit tight there through 3, but you got to pedal it to make sure. Should be flat out through 4 and off of 4. A little bit of a lift, but working on that race trim setup to keep himself into the draft and get yourself up there. But he's been one that's really impressed me. And then another guy as well, Aaron Ralphs. He's one that last year had a ton of speed and got caught out by weather on more than one occasion. As you see him rolling out in the very colorful car. Good-looking race car, too. But he's one that last year really I felt had a lot of speed. Just not a lot of luck in comparison to where he wanted to be.
Absolutely. Especially with 40 minutes to go on the board. Curious about some of the driver's thoughts as we're up to 34 now on the racetrack. Of note, Keith Jeffries returned to the circuit. Daniel Zegers is now also on the track. He's now moved to the bottom of the board as several cars are now trying to arrange another pit party led by Rylan Gray, of note, over the radio for this one. So, how important overall do you feel the need to, or rather, to rephrase what I was going to say, how important, again, do you feel having the right amount of energy for something like this is? We mentioned the headaches, for example, for Rockstar Gaming and his respective run. He was on the track for a bit today. To be able to have proper health for a practice such as this, to know that you're getting the max amount of time and speed out of your timing.
Well, and I think, too, a lot of it comes from, I know a lot of these guys run in VR. A lot of them, they may run shorter sprint car races, and they're maybe not used to being in VR this long. That does play a big factor. I know myself personally in VR, I get headaches quite a bit. So you really have to keep that in mind. It sounds nerdy to say, but eye strain is a real thing. Especially when you're running these long races. I know there's been a few times where myself and Baden have been running NASCAR races, and it's like you run them long enough, it's kind of getting hard to see. Things start blending in, and it looks like one of your cohorts in crime might be with us.
Yes, indeed. And Chase, I think, likes that. Is this Chase Rodman joining us? Broadcaster for the iRacing World of Outlaws National Energy Drink Sprint Cars World Championship and iRacing Morning Buildings Late Model World Championship, also making his pavement oval debut throughout this entire week and a half plus. Chase, how are you feeling?
Well, JP, to be completely honest with you, man, I feel really out of the element here. I've got a lot of experience on the pavement stuff here on iRacing before the dirt stuff came out, 6, 7, 8 years ago. I hate to toot my own horn here, but I'm like 75th or something on the all-time win list. But I get in this thing at this track, and I am totally lost. Like I It took me about 40 minutes last night just to get in the corner without spinning out, So we're trying to figure it out here. At least I'm beating a couple guys, so I'm excited about that. I don't run many leagues. I don't really run many races, to be completely honest with you. So Brian Walker, Wikipedia, and Jackson Steele and all these guys put this deal together.
We may have lost Chase. Chase, do you have a copy? Chase Rodman, do you have a copy? Apologies there, as I believe we may have lost Chase Rodman there. We will work to rectify the issue, as apologies on his behalf there, but interesting to see how he gets himself into his element, Billy. Or comfortable with this element, as he mentioned, and I'm glad he brought that up. Fair amount of oval victories, and he's talked about being active in the iRace community on the forums, especially in the past.
Yeah, and that's something, I know Chase just from the World Championship Series, and unfortunately I didn't get the chance to talk to him during my pro career, but always does a good job there, and most people I think attribute that, or see the name and they automatically think World Championship announcers and things like that. So it's pretty cool to see him being active on the service as far as a racer goes for this virtual month of May, and glad to see him here.
Indeed, and currently he's 29th on the board, and remember, won the rookie orientation race with a 1-2 with his team, really the sister team rather. He's going to be representing Steel Walker Racing. And of course, he mentioned some of the sponsors, and of course, Dirt Vision being a part of that, his teammate, part of Dirt Vision. It's interesting, the different perspectives, and especially hearing some of the discussions you and Baden and Zane have had so far throughout this, Billy, with these drivers and the experience they have.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the cool thing about this race in general is it's not like anything else. It's a race where the vast majority of these guys have probably never raced this car where it was designed to be on a road course. But there's a lot of them that that have run the Lionheart series and ran the official series before on the road courses, so they do understand the car a little bit. But it's neat that we're seeing the crossover from a Billy Brickley, who's a pretty much a wing sprint car guy, and Billy Bowerman, who does a lot of announcing. Same with Chase, that these guys are able to essentially kind of come into their own and be able to race a one-off event that doesn't pay a ton of money, but has a good solid purse that if you make the show, you've done something. That's, I think, the most important thing that we really wanted to convey was, if you made the show, you did something. There's that's really the biggest thing for me is seeing these guys actually take it as serious as they have been, and especially from all the sorts of disciplines. We talked about Carl Burke earlier, running a lot of the truck series races and things like that. So for them to cross over to run this Lotus, that's pretty impressive to me.
Keep in mind that we mentioned the name Carl Burke, for example. We mentioned Spomberg. That Northwest community overall, to touch upon that a little bit, is one of the more devoted ones in all of iRacing when you think about the layers, because I'm guessing you know about the Major Series, for example, and some of its roots. Guess who were some of the drivers who were a part of the founding members of that, and a part of the founding drivers, rather, during their first seasons? Burke, Spomberg, among those competitors. So they have a long, long history of being able to go into different cars, especially when you think about the history of series such as that one.
Yeah, and that's I think the beauty of iRacing is that we look at real racers, and going back to Indianapolis, you think of guys like Lloyd Ruby that are legendary at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Lloyd for having some bad luck and things like that, but you look at them, that they're legends of the sport, and iRacing is really no different. That there's guys that have been around for many, many years, cut their teeth in lower divisions and working with leagues, and every league has to start somewhere. So when you're one of the founding members of those leagues, that makes it's pretty cool to think about in the long term effects of these guys that have been running these cars and this sim for so long. iRacing has gained a ton of popularity over the last 7 to 10 months with the pandemic and people looking for an outlet to race and growing the service. But then you look back and you go, iRacing has been around for 10 years now, 10 years plus. So there's a lot of history that goes on within iRacing that a lot of new people like myself, and I've been around for 3 of those, that never really see. So it's cool that an event like this can bring so many of those people into different avenues. And our hope is over the next week or so we'll be able to get with the Carl Burks and I would love to talk more with Greg Turner and those guys that have been around for absolutely ever, that to see how iRacing has evolved for them.
I believe we have Chase Rodman now back. Chase Rodman, do you have a copy?
And I hope so. My internet was working fine all day and decided to get KO'd there in the middle of the interview. But not sure where I left off there, guys, but yeah, we're back.
We were starting to talk about the experience. You were talking about the feeling like a bit out of your element, but also mention the fact that you're up there in the wins totals in the history of iRacing, and then that was the point we left off towards that mark. But of course, this is one of the first times in a while I've personally seen you on the racetrack itself. What made you decide the fake 500 is the place I want to return to the big track for a big event, rather? Chase. And I believe we lost Chase again.
That has got to be the biggest curse on the planet. You're known as your announcer, and when you're coming in for an interview, things go awry.
He's not supposed to be interviewed. He's supposed to be the interviewer.
Yeah, that's the irony there is not lost with me.
Wow. So, on that note, 30 minutes to go in practice.
If there's one thing we're decent at, it's winging stuff on the fly, man. That's
Yes, indeed.
But the final 30 minutes, and it looks like actually we've got another player out on the racetrack now that Zane talked about at the top of the show, Doyle Lawrence, who's another iRacing veteran who's been around for a very long time. He just actually got into the qualifying field today, making his first laps as he goes for a spin cycle. So, announcer's curse still living, but Doyle making his first appearances out onto the racing surface as well. So, and we've got a big old pack of cars working itself down through the short chute through, I believe that's 1 and 2.
3 and 4.
Yep, 3 and 4. There we go. And huge pack of cars led, looks like, by TJ Majors.
Yes, indeed. And some of them actually banging some tires here. But you mentioned Doyle Lawrence as well in that mix, from riding shotgun, also in our organization, who races a ton in the Major Series, also races in the PRL Cup Series on Sunday nights. He's been trying to increase the amount of races he's been running in these major events in series over the past couple months especially.
Yeah, and it's I know Doyle from, he ran some sprint car stuff for a little while. Always a good driver, and glad that he's here. It's, like we've been saying, it's extremely cool to see these guys that do run, like the PRL Cup on Sunday, that are making their attempts to run the fake 500. It's a very we would love it to be the premier race on iRacing that everybody wants to run and everybody wants to win. So it's with the expanded format this year, it's been nice to see some new blood coming in, and hope to keep it up for next year's running.
And keep in mind, it's not just the fake 500 when you think about the layers. You have the Patriot 100, sponsored by Crescent Donut. You also have, we haven't talked too much about the night before the 500. Your thoughts on that one, where it's dirt racing at Kokomo?
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that one. Last year, the night before the 500 was over in Claremont at Indianapolis Raceway Park. We ran a 75 lapper. It was a fantastic race with the pavement sprint cars. We just felt like it was that's something, obviously we can't really do much rotation with Indy, so it was something that we felt like, we can still run the night before the 500 in the state of Indiana at the Kokomo Speedway, which puts on a fantastic show for the midgets anymore. They've that's one of my favorite racetracks on the service now. Definitely, as we get into more of the official races, with the midgets, and the midgets have been putting on a good show about everywhere that they go, and it's just a great way to get more people involved in the event. I know a lot of the guys that are running the fake 500 are also going to be running that. We talked to Hank Silver yesterday. He's going to run that as well. I know Skylar Brown and a few others that love running the dirt stuff, so it's a good way to get them involved as well. Midget roots go back deep with Indianapolis, so it just made sense. And there's going to be a lot of guys that we don't see, during the week running the fake 500 that are just running the midgets. So they're going to still get their spot in glory over fake 500 weekend.
Who are some of those names who you know so far who might be
I believe, if I remember correctly, Zane might have to pull that up. Zane's got, actually, I'll leave that to Zane. I know he's got the official list.
Gotcha.
But I believe that we've got a few of the Swindell Speed Lab drivers that run a lot of midget racing, a lot of the dirt specialists that run over there. When Zane gets back, we'll have to. I think he's doing some race control stuff, so we will get some confirmation there. As
I am here.
Yeah.
Yes.
Looking through it currently, we don't have any Swindell Speed Labs guys. We have most of the Dirt Vision guys coming from the fake over there. We're gonna have Bobby Sant Jr. joining our midget field from Jim B. Reaver Sports. Braden Eiler, Brett Perigo. Cole Newhoffen, World of Outlaw Pro Driver, will join us. Chris Springer is going to come run some dirt. Doyle Lawrence is signed up for that event as well. Dustin Griffiths, Gary Corley of Dark Horse Racing will make that show. A lot of elbow up drivers, James Tiernan, and then we'll join John Batista. Will be running the midgets, hopefully with us at Kokomo. John Harper, Josh Gerlach, Justin Carey, Kane Deller. Lance Sponberg is going to come run with us over there as well. Mark Broderick, Michael Klein, Nick Nichols, Rylan Gray, Stephen Hill, Tyler Kindle, Tyler Street, Tyson Landis, and Miles Jansen is a current entry list. Not full yet. We're about halfway there. That event we haven't promoted as hard. It's a lot easier to fill up dirt midget races that pay some nice change than it is to get 60 guys that don't drive a road course car on an oval. So we'll see that race start to get promoted pretty hard early next week, maybe late this week, and we'll get that list filled up.
Yeah, I firmly believe we'll see some of those Swindell Speed Lab drivers make the run. James Edens comes to mind, as he really likes the midgets, along with Adam Elby and a lot of those guys. I fully expect we're going to see a pretty full field of midgets. That Rylan Gray, though, on that list. Rylan Gray is one that he really, really excels in the dirt midget. He's cutting his teeth here in the Lotus at the big track, but when it comes down to midgets at Kokomo, Rylan Gray, definitely one of the best ones on the service as well. So a lot of good heavy hitters that are going to be there for that deal. But I fully expect to see potentially 10 to 15 the World of Outlaw Pro Series drivers making an appearance in that event as well.
I was going to say it looks like a stacked field overall, or sounds like it at least, with some of the names you mentioned. I'm curious as well to see how Chase does on the dirt side, if he can drive as well as he commentates it.
It's going to be interesting. I think, a lot of these guys we don't get to see run a lot of dirt midgets. So it's going to be interesting over the next week or so to see how those practice sessions are thrown up around on the server. But we're going to kind of stick with an interesting format, just like we have with our other dirt series with the DRT. So it's going to be a pretty exciting night. Anytime you can run on the dirt, I'm a happy camper. But yeah, there's a lot of racing to come. The biggest thing that we wanted to get with this event, was when you make a starting field, whether it's the Patriot 100 or the Fake 500, it's still a prestigious race, and there's still a lot on the line. Especially looking back at the Patriot 100 last year, where Kevin Click was on the outside looking in. Mike Rasmus was on the outside looking in, and both of those ended up on the podium for the fake 500. So just because you did not make the show into the fake, it really doesn't necessarily mean that you're not going to be in the fake 500. It's you got to still keep pushing, and you got to still keep pressing. And practice is very, very important. And it's going to be fun to watch how qualifying works out, to see how these guys practice next week as well.
Indeed. Keep in mind that some of the drivers in the pole up to 188 miles an hour when they reach the help of the draft. Rather, some of these headwinds, some of them getting much slower throughout that. That's going to be crucial, I think, is when they hit the track if the wind changes. We mentioned the 50% variable, though, is the main thing. That's going to be one of the main differences weather-wise for qualifying day is it's not going to be as drastic as in the past.
Yeah, that's with these cars being so temperature sensitive, it's something that we've tried to do to still keep the realism aspect into it. But Zane's done a lot of testing with weather and how these cars react in it and all that. So we should see a pretty impressive qualifying run all throughout the day. I know last year we found excitement all through the day, getting guys requalified, put them in the chute. It's a hectic day, especially with guys, withdrawing times and jumping into line and jumping out of line and knowing when to go and when to not go. And then that always afternoon lull while you're sitting around trying to figure out when the right time to pull the trigger and go is. Last year we saw guys that were paying attention to humidity drop. Bryce Bailey was one of those last year that figured it out that as soon as the humidity dropped, he went and put himself into line and put himself into the show. So you really have to sit there and watch the weather tab and make sure that the weather conditions are right for what you want. And pay attention to everybody else, too, because if you know a guy like Skylar Brown or James Tiernan goes out late and they don't lay a lap down, you might know that right then and there that the track doesn't have the speed in it, so you need to wait. But, again, on bump day last year, we saw Kevin Click sitting on the grid waiting to go out and not get a chance to go out and qualify due to the timer that's running out. So qualifying is one of the most nerve-wracking things whenever you talk to somebody that's run Indianapolis before in real life. That qualifying in Indianapolis is unlike any other. Guys like Rick Mears and the late Scott Brayton absolutely embraced qualifying and loved it. One of my favorite moments of all time, and I know for Baden as well, back in '96 when Scott Brayton wanted the pole for the Indianapolis 500, and he absolutely pulled himself out of a starting guaranteed spot in the 500 in order to nab the pole. So these guys, hopefully towards the end of the day, the weather conditions are right to where we can see a nab for the pole run late in the day. So it's going to be but it all comes down to that weather factor of how much heat the track is absorbing. And while we've got 20 minutes left right now, the track temperature, the air temp really hasn't changed, but the track temperature has gone. It started off at 110 degrees, so we've seen it as close to 150 or 125 today. And as we see it up on the screen, track temp is now dropped to 122, so the track's going to start picking up speed again. Just got to pay attention to it and know when the right time to pull the trigger is.
Indeed. When is that, in your opinion, to pull that trigger?
Man, it's last year. If last year is any indication, your first 20 to 25 drivers are going to be in pretty solid shape. Once you start getting into that mid-pack, then it starts getting a little sketchy later on down the grid, depending on what time that's going to be. A guy like Daniel Zagers that goes out 59th. He's gonna have his work cut out for him. He may not be able to run for the pole right away, but during the open qualifying session towards the end of the day, you're really gonna have to, that last half hour to 45 minutes, you really have to play the game to try to get yourself in line in order to make yourself available to be ready for that spot when it comes up, because the way that it all works is in order to get in line, you have to withdraw your time. So if you've withdrawn your time, but you don't hit the racetrack, you're in trouble if you timed it wrong. Last year, Joshua Chin timed it absolutely perfect with less than 15 minutes left to bump himself into the field. So really that happy hour that we talk about in practice is the same kind of thing where that track temp starts coming back down a little bit. That's really when it's gonna pick up.
100%. These drivers have definitely been trying to pick up the pace. It's not been the type of session, for comparison's sake, I want to mention too, mind you. Yesterday we seen 3-4 drivers at the very least bump their way in on a much hotter racetrack with not as much wind, and the wind gusting towards the side of the car, being able to bump their way up. We've seen the weather moments ago that it's now the headwind and the front wind that's kind of affected it to where if they experience this sort of weather in the future, this could be tricky for trying to plan out a race car compared to what they may have had earlier in the week.
Oh, absolutely. You may go out, you may see that track temperature and look and go, oh boy, we're sitting in perfect shape. The track temp dropped below 110 degrees, but yet the wind picked up 10 miles an hour. So depending on where that wind's coming from, you might pick up a big push coming off of 2, or you might get tight getting into 1, or whatever it may be. That's really where you have to pay attention to what the wind direction is doing, the wind speed. These cars are very aero sensitive, especially through the corners.
Well, approaching 15 minutes to go, and Baden, your thoughts on this in terms of who you feel needs to try and improve based on what you've seen so far the past 2 days?
It's always hard with something like this to say who needs to improve, because with something like this, I'm sure there's guys in the field that, in all honesty, are probably sandbagging right now. I look down the list, I see Joshua Chin down here. He has a lot of speed. We saw it last year. We know he's fast. He's towards about the middle of the pack right now. And we know he's faster than that. So it is hard to gauge who's not showing their hand yet and who legitimately needs to improve. It's really hard to gauge that. With something like this, you see a lot of mind games going on, and I think that's in full effect here. This is a big strategy game, and I guarantee there are guys in this field that are playing the strategy game that way. It's really hard to pinpoint, who's actually out to lunch. One guy down here towards the bottom, Kyle May, I know he's faster than his time showing. I don't believe he ran too many laps today. I think he can find a little bit. I'll look down through here. I see Chase Rodman. Looks like he's trying to work on where he's setting. I believe he's going to find some speed here. Tyson Landis, I believe he'll get a little bit better. I know he's pretty good no matter what he runs, so I think he'll find a little more here. Dan Zegger's in the middle of the pack. Right now, he's probably running qualifying run after qualifying run, because this is what he expects the track to be like when he rolls out. Dallas Breeze, he showed us some good speed yesterday. He's right there with Joshua Chin. I believe he's probably also working on single car runs. I think he's going to have some speed. Mike Rasmus, he's working towards the top of the board. He was really good come race day last year. Won the Patriot 100 and was really good on fake 500 day. So I think Mike Rasmus, he's going to have something there. He's currently setting at a 47.3. I believe he's going to have some speed as well. One guy, Tyler Street, we mentioned him being up in the air quite a bit. He's setting pretty decent right behind last year's winner, Kevin Quick. So Tyler Street, I guess all that flying has paid off a little bit here.
It's funny how sometimes that can work. He has just about 100 laps turned on the day. About a third of them have seen him fly up in the sky, but eventually they see you flying up the board. As we look at Carl Burke, currently still 7th. Carl Burke is one of those drivers I've noticed who's really improved to keep in mind because he was around the mid-pack before on the board. As we follow on board from above his head once again with the Roofco in-car cam.
And you can tell he's got a lot of pavement laps with how precise he's placing that car right on the white line, hitting his lines properly, getting off the wall down the straightaways to maximize the ground effects. And you can definitely tell Carl Burke might be a rookie in the fake 500, but Carl Burke's definitely not a rookie when it comes to iRacing, especially on the pavement. He's very smooth on the wheel, especially on corner entry. A lot of guys, you see him kind of give the car a little bit of a flick into the corner, and he's just really driving it on in there nice and easy. So Carl Burke's one, I think, we were talking about sleepers earlier. He's one that I think definitely is a possibility for a good run on Saturday.
Absolutely, and we mentioned the driver who will be leading things off with qualifying. Why don't we speak with that said driver right now? Tyler Street is now on the radio. Tyler Street, do you have a copy?
I do.
Tyler, first things first, an eventful session where you've spent at least 5 to 7 times up in the air. How are you feeling about your practice today?
Apparently I need to do more fly time, apparently. Billy and Clint call me Mr. Fly over here because that's apparently all I've been doing is just flying up in midair.
Yeah. How do you feel about the speed, though, when it's on the ground?
It's been really good. I think I'm doing a lot better than what I was last year. The biggest thing last year was just for me hitting my marks. The biggest was like really big, really bad for me, and I think that's why I missed qualifying just by that little much. And besides that, it's been doing really good this year. It's still stressful as I think is just as what it was last year.
We were talking about a little bit about the stress, and it was mentioned a bit by Zane Scott, some of that stress you had been feeling earlier on today. Now that it's a little bit closer now to qualifying, you are that first car, how much pressure is there, and how much pressure has there been overall for you and your team, knowing you've got the first car up, no mistakes, you were the benchmark?
There's a little bit of pressure. I'm not too nervous and too worried about it. I'm probably going to enjoy it a little bit more just because track temps will be lower than everybody else of being, 25th on back or, in the middle. I'm not really too worried. I could probably say that now, and then when we come to full day and you guys try to talk to me, and I'll probably be scared forever, and I probably will not be able to talk or speak or do anything, so that'll be really interesting.
When it comes to racing in a track such as this, describe the feel of being in the pack and having to negotiate the lanes and deal with the dirty air and the aero wash throughout the corners compared to what you may feel in your sprint car.
Dirty air is such a big thing, even in sprints and in this on asphalt. I'm not, a very big dude on asphalt driving. I obviously race 410 sprints, so that's my deal for it. And what the dirty air can do to the front end of a car compared to what it does here is you can very take similarities from it. So that's there's some things between that. I'm still trying to learn a little bit more on pack driving, to make sure you keep running the laps and not you only run like 10 laps and then you wreck yourself or you wreck somebody else's. I'm trying to get used to that. That's going to be the biggest thing, but I'm more worried about qualifying just to try to make it into the big show because I don't think with my work schedule, I can't really do the Patriot 100, so that's kind of my only bad part. So I'm trying my hardest to put in the time and to put in the laps to make the field and try to be with my friends and our team, and hopefully our team can do a little bit of pack driving and get a good finish for us.
Final 8 minutes to go in practice. Justin Prince, along with Baden Stewart, Billy Rowley, and Zane Scott in the broadcast booth speaking with Tyler Street. Tyler, of course, knowing some of the experience. There's a ton of drivers with real-world experience in here. What's kind of that thought process knowing that you've potentially raced against this guy? You've met potentially the people in the broadcast booth in person, kind of that pressure knowing this is how they race in real life. I'm wondering how they do in the sim, almost that thought process.
Yeah, that's kind of one of those worries that's still back of my mind of, I've raced with a lot of these guys in the dirt side of iRacing, so I know how they are in the dirt side, but, asphalt comes to a different story, and it's always a different process of it. I still have faith in anybody. Everybody knows how to drive a race car. Anybody can do it if you just put your mind to it and keep calm. That's the biggest thing I need, is I just have to keep my calm during all of this, and it's going to be interesting for that.
And of course, what has it been like trying to learn everything on iRacing since official race-wise, 2020, 42 dirt races, 25 on the ovals, 23 on the road courses, 17 dirt road, essentially in the jumpy trucks. What has been like that learning process trying to carry over what speed you have in real life to this virtual world to compete against those drivers you mentioned?
I think it's really helpful. I mean, for me, heck, this was my first year in the 410s, and it was, kind of nerve-wracking for me because never did it. I did 305s for 5 years, and then to finally move up into 410s, I was very nervous, and I didn't want to let people down, and I didn't want to let my family down on it because it's a family-owned team, and I didn't want to put them, have the money into something, that's not worth it, and then to come, onto iRacing last year and I got it for Christmas and came on, and I put a lot of time into it, and actually I think it helped me this year. I picked up a win in the 410. That was very cool to do for a rookie year. And then have these guys, Billy, Dave, Clint Stone, our whole Sofa King, Bowerman's really cool. He's one of those yappy ones on the end, but he forces you to do a lot better, so he's really cool to have.
How's the support been from your family for the Fake 500 this year?
Dad's on me a little bit, he enjoys that at least I'm qualifying first and not, one of those that you sit there the whole entire time on the computer or something like that. So, we're in the process of building race cars for 2021. So that's he wants to be as much time out in the shop instead of me on the computer. So,
was going to say, how is it that balance between preparing for this race and then going to the shop to build race cars and then back to the car and into the virtual car and back and forth?
It's been a little hard right now. That's what I saw the guys on early this morning of doing laps, and Dave tagged me. He goes, "Where am I?" And I had to say I was out in the shop, working in the shop, building race cars, because, I'd like as much time as I'd like to keep putting into it. It's hard for me because I got to do the real life stuff and go to jobs and work on the race cars. It's the hardest thing for me, and it's not that hard, but I still, at least later in the night like this, it definitely helps me because I'm a night person. I'm not a morning person at all, so I'll stay up all night, race this stuff instead of it early morning.
Under 5 minutes to go in the practice, and there's still one more practice session tomorrow after all of this in preparation for qualifying weekend. What's kind of the focus for you and your team now with one more session essentially before everyone goes flying around the racetrack to try and get inside that top 33?
I think now that we're starting to see more of this higher temp and higher temps on the racetrack, I think we're trying to find that speed where it's just enough but not too much to where you have issues pushing it off the exit of the corners, or with the wind, if you have the wind that affects it or something like that. That's our biggest thing that we're trying to find, is just find that extra speed that we're not really truly finding right now. So we're doing it. We're working together. Billy and Clint are working together big time right now of trying to find stuff for in the pack and find stuff by themselves that you're still having the speed for it.
Overall, what would it mean if you can make the show and find your way to victory lane for the Fake 500?
Oh man, if I could making it for me is going to be huge for me, because this event means a lot to me, and what you guys do for the Fake 500, this is awesome. It's very stressful, but it actually brings the real race side out of you, that you want to be competitive. You want to be one of those guys that's at the top of the board, or racing with the rest of them. So that's huge. And then if I could win it, I'd probably have to make a video to where I went to Indy and tried kissing the bricks at Indy, because I would send that to you guys immediately.
Wait,
we would ultimately appreciate that if you pull this off.
We'd actually be there.
Yeah. Myself and Baden are very close to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway geographically as well. So if that comes to fruition, count us in. We're there, and I have people with good video cameras and everything. We will chronicle the whole bit.
I mean, if that happens, I mean, I'm only 3 hours away from Indy, so I'd happily do it. Bring a gallon of milk and just dump a gallon of milk on me. I wouldn't care. I mean, that would be the greatest moment of my life right there. It'd be something I would remember forever.
Well, our milk sponsor is back from last year, but I'm sure you'll get the milk a while before we can orchestrate that. So that's going to be rough, but, dude, you got to do what you got to do.
Ohio people get their milk the same night.
This is true.
That is very true.
So you've got extra motivation now, Tyler. You got extra motivation.
Well, and that, I know you guys were talking about VR, and I'm one of the VR guys, so I know it's a little different for me. We just ran a little 6-hour Daytona 24, a little thing that we're trying to do for the Daytona 24 on iRacing. I did an hour and a half on VR. This will be interesting because it'll be pretty close to that 2.5 hours on VR. So that's going to be a little interesting for me.
Yeah, that's going to be really intriguing to see how this all plays out. 90 seconds to go in practice. Of course, some debrief you have to do with your team. Anything you'd like to add before you let you get back to your team?
I got to thank everybody that puts this together, and then I got to thank, all of Silva King. I know they were giving me a little bit of shit earlier, and I mean, it's what happens. We're all good buddies. We've all been doing this. Well, I mean, I joined them last year with Dave and Billy, and it was really cool for them to allow it to me to join the team, and I've enjoyed every little bit of it and getting to know these guys. I call them friends every day because we all give each other crap every day, and then we all mess with each other every day. This is something that we always do. So I got to thank all of them for what they do and what they, for helping me do this and helping get setups. A lot of people out there could just be like, we'll just push you off to the side and let you learn on your own. So what they do is awesome, and then what you guys are doing for this and broadcasting it and doing all this interviews, it's really cool.
I'd like to apologize once again on behalf of the language used in that final answer, but thank you very much for the time, Tyler. Let you get back to your team as the closing stages and the closing bell about to ring.
Thank you.
Howard Street.
You can always tell the dirt guys, too, because they're always going to drop an S-bomb somewhere in an interview.
Always. Say a bad word.
If something happens qualifying, you probably don't want to interview me right off the bat.
No, we do. No.
There will be a lot of F-bombs. Just every little bit of the vocab probably will come out. It'll be the worst experience ever probably on broadcast.
Sentence enhancers.
And as the gun goes off, day number 2, Brent Marks Racing Esports practice day. Over and done with. Many laps done throughout this session. James Tiernan was fastest yesterday. James Tiernan fastest again overall over the top 10.
Yeah, that another quick day. Your top 5 state of majority lockstep. 47.087 and 191.135 mile an hour lap time set by Tiernan. Then second spot, Skylar Brown, another quick day for him with another 147.1, followed by Clint Stone, then Stephen Hill, then you have Chris Springer. TJ Majors bumped his way up to 6th in the closing stage of the session with the help of the draft for the 47.235. Billy Brickley in 7th, Carl Burke shuffled to 8th, John Keiko, and Daniel Zangert's closing stages also snuck his way towards the top 10 with a 47.3 to close things on out. Very productive. Very quick times, but only one more practice session for these drivers and then qualifying day. Billy, it's going to be a busy next couple days for these organizations. What's up on that calendar, and how do you feel these drivers will adapt?
Yeah, tomorrow's going to be interesting. New Year's Eve, we're taking the night off from New Year's Eve as far as broadcasting goes. We're still going to have practice, and we'll have updates throughout the evening on that as well, as we'll still be in the server watching that. So tomorrow's going to be rather interesting to see how these guys do, see what the weather shakes out as, because tomorrow's going to be their last. This is our Fast Friday, which is on a Wednesday, which is weird, but it's or Tuesday, Wednesday. I don't even know what day it is. Thursday.
It's Wednesday.
Okay, so Thursday tomorrow, Fast Thursday. going to be very interesting to see what these guys are capable of. I think the usual suspects, James Tiernan, Skylar Brown, will be up front. Clint Stone, I really feel like he's going to be one to watch on Saturday, as well as T.J. Majors, Brickley, Burke, the whole group. So cannot wait for qualifying on Saturday for Apex Autosport Pole Day, which. It's one of the most hectic days of the year, but it's also one of my favorite ones. Qualifying in Indianapolis is a special place, and especially when there's so much on the line, getting yourself into the field. Unlike the real 500 the last few years, where it's pretty much who's going to be in it and not. This one, it's wide open. 60 cars. 60 cars will be on racetrack on Saturday. Going to be interesting to see who makes the field and who does not.
Absolutely. Your quick final thoughts, Baden, before we say goodbye.
I think we saw some interesting stuff here. Happy hour was really interesting. Seeing guys start to get an idea of what they're looking at for race trim here. Like I said earlier, you see the guys that are confident in what they have. They know they're safe. You saw other guys that tried to get every bit of single car runs that they could. It's going to get interesting tomorrow. Tomorrow's make or break time.
Mm-hmm.
You got to get everything you can tomorrow. It's going to be really interesting to see where we're setting at the end of the day tomorrow, and then after that, it's on. It's game time. It is pole day, so that's one of the more exciting times in this whole deal. It's going to be some guys that are struggling to sleep after this.
Yes, indeed. And Zane Scott, do you have any thoughts on what to expect coming this weekend?
I think coming this weekend, we're going to see guys really maybe try to get their practice setups to finally come through here on these qualifying runs that they're putting in early in the server. Another day, track temps in 120 degrees. I think we saw it max out at 124. And we had about an 82 degree ambient temperature here today in Indianapolis in May. And we're going to just looking at this qualifying track here, the guys at the top, James Tiernan, Skylar Brown, Clint Stone, the top three. Tiernan, I think, is going to be our odds-on favorite rolling into Saturday's pole day session. He's going to be the 16th car out on track at roughly around 2 p.m. Eastern time. What will the temperatures do for him when he hits the track is yet to be known, and what we'll see. But if the track is cool, that's going to throw a lot of these guys for a whirlwind of thoughts, because they've all been practicing this week on hot tracks, and if it's cool, they're going to get a lot more grip than they expect, and that could almost make them too gripped up to the track and make them loose. Or it could get hotter. We don't know yet. Sure. And we can look down the list. Tyler Street's going to be the first car out. We just talked to him. He's confident in what he's got. Joshua Chin, the fourth car out. A little bit slow on the speed charts today. A 47.507, it would appear. It's about 188 miles an hour, high 187 miles an hour. Is he going to be able to pick up the pace come Saturday? Look down further in the order. Last year's champion, Kevin Click. He'll be the 32nd car out of track, roughly 3:04 p.m. Eastern time. Can he make the show? That was his main goal. He just wants to make the race. And then further down, the second quick car, fastest car today in Brent Marks Esports practice, Skylar Brown. He will be the 50th car on track at roughly 4:16 p.m. Eastern time. He's ran 191 miles an hour pretty much both days, but he's going to have to deal with the hottest part of the day come Saturday in his qualifying run, or at least his initial run. So it's going to be interesting how this plays out. Tomorrow, we're not going to have a broadcast, but the track is going to be open for these drivers. They're all going to come back out, get those final adjustments made. We'll keep everyone updated on social media. And I don't have any closing remarks here, but I say we'll end this broadcast here with your final words, Justin, and then we'll just let everyone know that the Fake 500, it's a book, it's a story.
It's an absolute story, and for some, there is a build-up to the climax of each and every story, through the trials and tribulations. And for some, especially when it comes to the story of racing, preparation has always been a major step in that. And for some of these teams and drivers, these past couple days have been a big part of that. With that, it's time to say goodnight. For my broadcast partners tonight, Zane Scott for Baden Stewart, for Billy Rowley, I'm Justin Brent saying so long. Thank you for tuning in once more for today's coverage of practice from the racing capital of the world in Speedway, Indiana, the virtual Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Be sure to tune in this weekend for qualifying coverage. With that, enjoy the rest of your evening. We'll see you in the new year.